right? I guess we can start over if this doesn't go well. And I do casual intros, so I just kind of like for these for these
Yeah.
I don't have like a welcome to the channel thing. So welcome,
damn.
yeah. So welcome to the channel.
No special treatment for me, I guess.
Well, I could probably introduce you because this is your first time appearing on the channel. So first, let's start with. This is going to be a little different because the channel is typically about video games, but this is a board game that I've been obsessed with for the last, 7 or 8 years at this point. And I found someone who, like-minded, is obsessed with the game, and we thought it'd be fun to go through and tier the spirits, and depending on our actual motivation, probably everything that can possibly be tiered in this game. Do you have it? I don't know if you use a screen name.
Just call me Jaden.
All right, well, we're gonna go with Jade. He doesn't use a screen name. He's not cool that way.
I know. I'm not a special boy.
Yeah. Okay. So, this is so we're gonna make this. I think what we're gonna do is we're going to tier the. I want to tier them anyways. I'm gonna say in from the base game to Nature's Incarnate. The reason I want to do it that way is because if you start at S tier and work towards F tier, it's gonna make it too easy to predict exactly what spirits are going where, and vice versa if you go from F to S. So it's not fun. By doing it this way, it means you're not going to necessarily know where we're going to put our spirits, except for some of the really obvious ones for those of you who are familiar with Spirit Island, the game that we're going to be tiering here. One last note. So basically, I want to talk a few things. So what we're going to be rating the spirits on, I think it's important to discuss the credentials, as well as what the different tier the tier rankings mean. So
yeah, you can use that. That's your list and your sort of fake descriptions.
Yeah. So first of all, what we're rating the spirits on and how they can move up and down on the tier list is how good are they in a 4-person game. And we're using a 4-person game rather than true solo, even if you're playing solo with 4 spirits. Because in true solo, there are some spirits that are more or less guaranteed to win. And it's not necessarily, depending on the difficulty, it can be a little bit of a struggle for them. But the true solo, there are certain spirits that just almost can't. Some spirits probably can't even beat true solo, at least not without all the luck in the world or a low difficulty. And other spirits that even on the highest one, that's the only way that they even break a sweat. Whereas in a 4-person board, it's kind of what separates the boys from the men, if you understand that. It's what spirits play differently when there's 3 other allies. In addition to the fact that the boards interact with each other, and you could have invaders coming from behind you as opposed to strictly from the ocean. So it's a very different ballpark when you're playing with 4 spirits. And like I said, I think that is what showcases whether a spirit is good or not. Is can it participate in a 4-person game? Because typically, though not always, spirits that are good in a 4-person game are also good in true solo, but a true solo spirit is not, strictly speaking, good in a 4-player game.
Because you can handle yourself and your board does not mean you're going to go be able to help with other boards.
Yeah. Go ahead, phrase it. So yeah, we're using spirits under a 4-person setup. We value. I should also note what we value, and so you'll see this in the tier list, reflected in the tier list. Spirits who are strong early in the game, the stronger they are early in the game, typically the better we view them, because winning the game generally requires you to either win the early game or at the very least keep pace with the invaders. Because once you lose control, you basically have lost the game. So spirits who are able to maintain that level of control, or otherwise even just win kind of the early game, is more valuable than spirits who are extremely powerful in the late game and can sometimes, if not frequently, make a comeback in the late game. But just because they can doesn't mean that they will, and as a result doesn't mean they're necessarily good spirits. So we look for strong early games. Typically, we value proliferation, as most people do. Proliferating onto the island is extremely valuable. The faster you can clear out your spirit tracks, the better, usually. Very few spirits actually do poorly if they can clear out their spirit track. We also tend to value removal, if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering terminology, but we typically like spirits that are able to remove the invaders. Pushing, gathering, and control abilities are great, and I'm not knocking them. Using them to move the invaders into locations where they can be destroyed is obviously the best value you can get. But if you can't destroy them once you move them, then they're still posing a threat. So we value the ability to take invaders off the board quite highly. That doesn't mean that spirits who can't do it aren't going to be rated highly. It just means that they have to really provide something unique and be extremely powerful in whatever they're doing in order to properly compete. Let's see here. What else do we want to talk about? We'll talk probably more about this in detail as the spirits pop up. But
talk about value of certain mechanics.
But for a brief overview of some of the mechanics, because this will probably also come into play. So the different mechanics, like the tokens, like wild tokens, are by far the most powerful token in the game. So spirits who tend to favor cards that enable them to use those tokens, their elements line up type of thing, or they can just fit those cards into their playstyle. Those are extremely valuable, as opposed to a token like Strife, which I'm not knocking its value, but it doesn't have the same value as a Wilds or a Disease type of a thing. So the Spirit's abilities to, whether they use the token innately or their ability to gain those tokens through the cards and the elements that they use to prefer cards that use those tokens, will also factor into the decision making. And if they prefer to use good tokens, or are at least in elements to use those good tokens without harming their effectiveness, will also help them rate higher. And we'll talk, like I said, more about the individual mechanics as they pop up. So I think that's about all we need to do for setup here.
Yeah, I think that covers the gist of it.
Yep. So we'll start with the base game spirits. I think we just start with the four. What are they called? Like low complexity.
Yeah.
Start with the four low complexity spirits then. So let's talk right off the bat, because this is probably going to be the easiest one to just rank, and we'll just get it out of the way, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of disagreement, though feel free to disagree if you want.
You don't want to save Easter Island guy for last?
No, we'll just get him out of the way. We're going to Easter Island guy, also known as...
Vital Strength of the
Vital Strength of the Earth. He's kind of a garbage tier spirit. He's, spoiler alert right now, since we're ranking him right now, is the worst spirit in the entire game, bar none. He is absolutely garbage. He is very slow to get going. His innate power without his aspect is next to useless, especially on higher difficulty. Oh, that's what we forgot to mention, actually, is we're also going to rate spirits based on difficulty about 7, 8, 9, and preferably higher, because that's another way to help determine how good spirits are. If they can survive and hold their own in those higher difficulties, then they're better than spirits who struggle to hold their own. And this guy very much struggles even in lower difficulties. His defend 3...
that's largely in part because of the mechanic that he gives.
Yeah, his defend 3 at a location with a sacred site is only so good, and generally only in the very, very early game before the invaders have really built up any sort of fortification.
Not to mention, it's the requirement of a ritual site, and he doesn't have... He has options to put presence out every single turn, but it's still taking 2 turns to get a ritual site out every time, and that's still a very small area to cover.
Yeah, he very much struggles. His innate power is extremely expensive in comparison to his card plays per turn, taking a minimum of 3 turns just to reach 2 card plays to trigger the first level of his innate, which is good by all means, but it's not like fantastic. And having to wait till turn 3 to get it is a steep price to pay when there are several minor powers that do exactly what it does and better. So yeah, he's just without his aspect, even with his aspect, well, we're actually, I should know, we're not going to rate the aspects. We'll save the aspects for a different tier list. We'll rate all the aspects separately. And then we can kind of compare the tier list that way rather than throwing them all on one here. But yeah, as his base, he's just absolute garbage. And this is probably a good time to note it since he is kind of supposed to be the gateway spirit to the defend mechanic. The defend mechanic is, while not a bad mechanic, let me make this perfectly clear before everyone starts yelling at me in the comments. There aren't bad mechanics in Spirit Island. All right, there just aren't bad mechanics. However, not all mechanics are created equal, and defend is one of the weaker mechanics. It doesn't usually scale well into the higher difficulties because the invaders will put out more damage, whether it's through direct damage like Sweden, or just through their ability to quickly fortify, such as France, England, or the Habsburg mining colony, or even Habsburg farming colony. They can just output so much more damage in the higher difficulties so much more efficiently that a lot of the defend cards, which are defend 3, defend 4, especially if they're minor powers, they don't cut it. They're not going to stop enough damage to prevent the blight, which is the whole purpose of using defend. I guess that and saving the Dahan so the Dahan can retaliate, but if you can't defend enough damage to not blight the land, then chances are you're losing a Dahan or two in the process too, which means they're not going to retaliate as hard. So yeah, defend is, again, no means a bad mechanic. It's just a weak mechanic, and this guy specializes in it, which is not helping him because, as we said, he's slow to even get the ability to put out that little tiny bit of defense he can put out. His unique cards are decent. He has one that stops Ravage completely, very valuable. He also has the one that deals, I believe it's 2 damage unless Dahan are present, then it deals 4 damage. That's nice.
That's not bad.
Yeah, 3 energy though is expensive.
Anyway, until your Dahan are all gone.
Yeah, 3 energy for it is really steep for that. If you're not getting the 4 damage part out of it, anyways.
Oh, that's the 3 energy cost card that he has.
Yeah, it's 3 energy for 2 damage and like 4 or 5. I forget the exact amount off the top of my head. It's like 4 or 5 damage if the Dahan are present. So, and yeah, unless you're getting the bonus damage from the Dahan being present, you're really overpaying for how much damage you're getting.
Yeah, and if you're going to even be able to try and use that early, you're either locked into taking 1 growth option, or you're just not going to play it and go for the card play so that you can get your innate.
Yeah, he's a rough spirit. I think this is one thing we're going to touch on as we get to them, but the New Horizons spirit, I think, kind of take a lot of what the base game low complexity spirits were supposed to do in terms of introductions and just did them better. Not that the spirits themselves are better. You'll see when we get to the tier list as where everything lands as we get to there. But the New Horizons spirits introduced new people to the mechanics and how they worked in a more efficient way. Even if the spirit was worse or better. Moving on. I think that's enough about the worst spirit in the game. Next up, well, I'm just gonna look at what we got here. We got Shadows. All right, Shadows is the one we got here. Shadows Flicker Light. Where did I see him?
That's not
there. He is.
Oh, okay.
All right, Shadows Flicker Light Flame. All right, we were not gonna throw him in the chest quite yet because I threw the one guy because it was pretty obvious. Everyone knows that the Easter Island guy is the worst spirit in the game.
Yeah, so I have not played this one as much as several others because I obviously lean more towards Fear Guy, who we will get to later.
Yeah. I don't hate Shadows. I will say that he is one of the several spirits who greatly benefited from several, if not at least one in particular of his aspects. His base self, he at least can trigger his level 1 of his innate off of 2 card plays, and he can get to those 2 card plays on the first turn if you so desire. Mm-hmm. So he's got that going for him.
He can even hit that second level fairly decently. It's
just
a quick hop and a skip on that draw.
Yeah,
line.
he can actually trigger his innates at a much more reasonable pace than the Earth Dude. His special rule is pretty nice. Being able to target any land with Dahan regardless of range is definitely nice. Range is one of those things I think is very underappreciated, especially by newer players. The cards that just say ignore range or give +1 range even, it's phenomenal what you can do. because cards are oftentimes balanced around their range. And the ability to ignore that or add range to it to do something, it allows the card to do things that it's really not supposed to be able to do. The easiest way to look at this is with Volcano, which we'll talk more about later, but like it's insane what you can do with bonus range. So yeah, his ability to target any land with the Han regardless of range is definitely not something to overlook by any means. His struggle, in my opinion, and what makes him where we're gonna have to put him on the tier list here is he doesn't really have a lot of sustainability in his card plays. What I mean by that is that he kind of, once he gets to about 3 card plays, he's kind of stuck there, because if he tries to get up to 4, God forbid 5 card plays, he's going to have to reclaim every turn or even every other turn in a best case scenario, which slows down his ability to put out presence. So he kind of caps out at 3 card plays for the longer part of the game, which is definitely good. 3 card plays is usually pretty good. For most spirits, playing 3 cards plus most spirits have 2 innates, which is where he kind of struggles again. But theoretically, if you have 3 cards and 2 innates, you're using 5 powers between 2 to 4 lands, depending on which lands you're trying to target, which one he did. So between 2 to 4 lands, so you have a lot of leeway. He does not have that strict leeway, but he's definitely good enough. He also has the problem, in my opinion, of trying to introduce how the fear mechanic works to newer players, but he's not good at it.
No, he's not.
At least I feel like he's supposed to be kind of the introductory to fear, and he's really not good at that.
Yeah.
He's better than the other low complexity spirits at it, but it's not going to necessarily push you towards a fear victory any faster than most of the other spirits would ever be able to do it.
He's really just going to hit that kind of pace that you would normally want to. You're at least covering yourself.
Yeah, he can. Yeah, he can afford the 4 fear that he puts into the pool by existing, pretty reliably. But he's not going to be able to compensate for other spirits. He does have a pretty nice energy track, which means he can go for major powers relatively early in the game. It sometimes can be difficult if you go up to 3 card plays early on, but he can make it work. I've done several different play styles where I've tried to get some early major powers off of 2 card plays when I'm playing 3 card. He can definitely has a lot of kind of flexibility, so to speak, in his build. He can do a lot of different things. The biggest downfall I've been saving for last year is his elemental combo of fire and moon. It's just not a particularly good combo. There's plenty of cards in the deck, both decks, that will get you moon and or fire together, but they are not as prevalent of a combo as many other elements are. So especially with a lot of the more recent updates, it's become just a little bit harder for him to get cards when he's drawing minors and or majors that have both moon or fire. They're definitely there, and he should hopefully pick some up, but many of the games I've been playing with him, from digital to physical copies, he oftentimes whiffs, I would say, 1.5 out of 4 times on average, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's statistics. It's kind of how it works, you know?
Yeah.
2 out of 8 or whatever.
Or
3
1
out
out
of
4
8.
would be roughly what?
Yeah, 3 out of
16?
No, it'd be 3 out of 8. So out of 16, it'd be 6 out of 16.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So it's that's not like a bad whiff level. It's possible for any spirit to whiff. I just, in my experience and my feel from playing him, is he whiffs just a little bit more frequently than some others, which can hurt him in terms of triggering his level 2 innate, not so much as level 1. He should be able to get that one pretty reliably. But getting his level 2 innate, if you whiff once or twice, or I should maybe say 1 too many times, it does make triggering the level 2 innate very difficult suddenly, as you're struggling to find cards. The result is I can't really see him any higher than about C tier, because he does, as a result of everything we talked about, struggle a little bit in the higher difficulties, just because of being basically just good enough rather than, as good as he would need.
He doesn't really excel in any one thing.
That's a better way to phrase that, yeah. All right, next up, it looks like we've got...
River Surges or Lightning Bird?
And we can do whatever one I find first on the tier list. I found Lightning Bird first on the...
Lightning Bird. So lightning swift strike.
Lightning bird hit. This is, spoiler alert, probably the best of the low complexity spirits by a pretty substantial margin, if I had to be completely honest.
I mean, destroying cities is
always
nice.
He has destroy effects, which, like we said before, we value getting rid of plastic pieces on the island. That's a very important thing to us. The bird does have kind of an interesting build in that it takes him 3 card plays to trigger the level 1 of his innate, and he starts with 2, and he has very low energy gain early in the game. So getting him to a point where he has 3 card plays and the energy to sustain 3 card plays, not to mention to sustain the ability to put out presence while playing 3 cards per turn without a single reclaim on track. He's a difficult spirit. I know it says low complexity. It feels like a lie because he is not low complexity in my opinion. Learning how to put out his presence and to play him effectively is not something that's particularly simple. One of the builds I've seen, I'm not going to claim this is the best possible build. But one of the builds I've seen a lot of people, and I've used it myself to great effect a lot of times, is to start by doing his 2 presence out on the energy track. Then you go out 1 presence and the 3 energy to get his 3rd card play, at which point you can trigger his innate on turn 3 by only playing 1 card on turn 1. And then you just reclaim 2 turns in a row, and you dig for fire and you dig for wind to keep triggering your innate as frequently as you can. And once you have the ability to trigger your innate, say 2 turns in a row, then you can kind of go back to putting out presence. Again, fire and wind, similar to fire and moon, not the most frequent to appear. I've struggled many a times to find a card that has both fire and wind. Typically, I have to just settle for one or the other. Usually fire in this case because he prefers fire by a little bit. Even though wind is very important to him because it's what allows him to turn slow powers into fast powers, which is extremely valuable.
I do feel like you can pretty consistently get fire and wind together.
It's not as easy as you might think. There are definitely cards out there, but it's not quite as bad in my opinion as trying to get the fire and moon to line up.
Yes,
but it's not as simple as it. And it's not just from looking at him. I play a lot of the fire dude, and getting fire and wind for his 2nd innate or his 3rd level of the innate, whatever you want to call it, where he can split his damage, it's not the easiest thing to do.
Okay.
So in a similar ballpark, he's got the same problem. But it's not nearly as bad, like I said, in my opinion, as the fire and moon. So he does have that going for him, but it is not simple.
Yeah.
It might take him a card.
About him starting with double the amount of card plays as all of the other like intro spirits. Do you feel that?
I feel like that's a trap. I feel like that's a trap because, like I said, the not the best. I'm not going to say the optimal build, but the kind of the recommended. That's a good word. The recommended build of playing 1 card on turn 1 and 3 cards on turn 2. It kind of feels like they trapped you by putting 2 cards right there. It feels to me like what they should have done is done 1, 2, 3, 4 type of a thing on his card plays, and then knocked all of his energy down 1 so that he'd get higher energy growth, a little bit higher energy growth anyways, earlier. So then theoretically your turn 1 would be put out 2 presence on the energy track, turn 2 you put out 2 presence on the card track, getting you up to 3 card plays in that way. And then you can sustain with the slightly higher energy growth. You don't have to worry about the energy growth you get from growth 3 option.
Okay.
So
I
like I said, I feel
lack of card draw is also
it's
locked behind the reclaim.
Yeah, he definitely has one. The one thing though that is going to be the saving grace here before we rank him is he is a phenomenal support spirit. He is great at supporting other spirits. And that alone, combined with many of his other good qualities, I think does get him into... Oh, shit, we didn't explain the
I was going to say, we haven't even talked about his just special rule that is part of what makes him considered easier, is his ability to just make low powers fast.
Yeah. But we also didn't explain the tier list like we meant to. So, yeah. Basically, I should explain the ranking here. So, a lot of people will view S as the best tier. S is not the best tier, quote unquote, in my opinion. S tier is for spirits that break the game, shall we say. They change the rules. They change how not only you play the game, but how other spirits will interact with the board and play the game as a result. So any of the spirits we place in S tier, they're not strictly the best spirits. They are spirits who, when they're in a game, the game changes as a result of them being in it. The other spirits will play differently. They'll take different power cards. They'll take different growth options. The other spirits will do different things because these spirits are in the game, and it enables them to play in unique ways.
Yeah, it's obviously jumping a little bit ahead here, but like Ocean.
Yes.
If Ocean is in the game, you are going to take a lot more push cards because suddenly that Ocean's looking real open.
Yeah. Yeah. So S tier is not the best tier. It's the tier for spirits who fundamentally alter the game state or the gameplay of the game. In that regard, A tier is arguably the best tier. A tier is going to be the spirits who steamroll over the game and even in the high difficulties can hold their own and generally win even early in the game. So A tier is arguably, again, the best tier. This is where the spirits that are like A tier would be the highly recommended if you're playing in high level difficulties, and maybe pull 1 or 2 of the S tier. Don't necessarily play with 4 S tier spirits because they're not necessarily going to synergize together. What makes S tier spirits good is that they synergize with other spirits outside of the S tier. And so that's what you want to combine 1, maybe 2 of the S tier with, A tier and B tier to get a lot of value out of the S tier spirits. B tier is, in my opinion, basically a spirit that is on the same level as A tier, but generally has some sort of a flaw, some sort of a defect, or something that just they by themselves cannot compensate for and require their allies to basically step up a little bit. In the case of the Lightning Bird here, as we said, he's got a very strange build, at least his recommended build is a very strange build, where he spends early turns reclaiming and not putting out presence. Not necessarily the end of the world, because based on where you put your presence on the turns you were putting it out, you can get the range and the reach that you need across your board. But it means that you're not able to put out presence to assist your other spirits. So your support cards are going to be cards not that target allies' land and help them move or destroy pieces, but cards that just target other spirits, regardless of. So he does require his downside is just that he requires a weird build and a lot of, I don't want to say mastery. That feels really gatekeepy. He requires a bit of nuance, we'll say, to kind of get a feel for. And
I want to say it just goes against what your natural response would be to looking at what he
fair.
does.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to. The nuances of the spirit just kind of make him play in a way that not suboptimal, but require a degree of finesse.
Yeah,
that's what's keeping him out of A tier. And then C tier is basically spirits who, if you bring them into a high tier game, they can hold their own. They might, depending on the spirit in question, be a little bit more reliant on what cards they draw. And if they draw the wrong cards, they're going to struggle. If they draw the right cards, they can just outright win. I don't want to say this is necessarily the swingy tier, but some of the spirits in the tier are definitely swingy based on the cards that they draw. But these are spirits that just kind of hold their own. Bringing them into a high-ranked game is not going to hinder you, but they're not necessarily going to just win you the game. They're not just going to take control of their island, of their board, and force the invaders into submission.
Yeah. Would you say more just like a generally on par?
Yeah,
with a higher risk of if they start to lose, it's going to slowly snowball out of control, or
something like that. Yeah, that's pretty fair. D tier is for spirits who, in high tier games, are going to struggle by default. They're not bad spirits. That's why they're not in F tier, which is a strictly bad spirit. But D tier is ones that just they find it difficult to sustain in higher difficulty games. And as such would be, I guess you could call this the not recommended tier. Basically, A is like the recommended, B is the recommended, but you're going to have to be a little careful. These spirits have these spirits have some sort of a downside that you have to play around. And by that, I mean the other spirits typically have to play around it. Typically. C is they're fine, but as a result, don't expect to just win your board. You're going to have to do some work. And D is, like I said, kind of like they're not recommended. There's nothing necessarily strictly wrong with them, but they just by default are going to have a difficult time. And then F tiers don't play this spirit ever. In fact, it's probably better that you just pretend he doesn't exist, because bringing him into a 4-player high-level game is, in my opinion, tantamount to just playing 4 boards with 3 spirits. He is actively detrimental to your fucking game. So yeah, let's get back into this. We have River Surges is the next one.
Yes.
River Surges. All right. This is another one of the low complexity base game spirits that I think is pretty decent. It's the only one whose energy or whose spirit track actually has one of the unique mechanics, in this case, the Reclaim 1. Its innate ability triggers off of 2 card plays, which is always valuable, especially when it can get access to the 2 card plays on the first turn if it so chooses.
And it's also a push effect, which can help stop those builds and whatnot.
Yep, indeed. It's a very good control spirit. It's supposed to be the introduction to control spirit, I imagine. It does have the ability through its Reclaim 1 and the ability to gain cards without having to reclaim. It can sustain what I like to refer to as minor spam, where you just collect a bunch of minor powers and play as many cards as you can per turn until you are forced to reclaim because you have no cards left. He can sustain that. You could also go for major powers. I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to claim to know the optimal play style for a lot of these different spirits. I don't think I can claim for any of them, honestly. But yeah, this is a really good spirit in terms of the low complexity ones for sure. There's a lot of value. Again, this is another one that, like a lot of these ones, is kind of saved by the aspects we're going to be talking about in a different video. But by no means is River Surges a bad spirit. Its special rule where you can drop a presence in a wetland and it counts as a sacred site is phenomenal. It gives you a lot of options to put out presence while still taking cards, minor or major, that require sacred sites for targeting without having to create one. So it's very valuable in that regard. It also has some damage, so as the game goes later, it does have the ability to actually impact the invaders detrimentally, other than just simply moving them to a new location. But being that it's a control spirit, it does rely heavily on getting the isolate, getting isolate cards, which are from Jagged Earth. So, but yeah, getting isolate cards are very nice for the spirit, because until it gets to the point where it can start doing some damage, its damage output, until that, it's very limited. So it'll basically just be pushing invaders around, which means they're going to be exploring out of the locations you push them to, even if they're not building and ravaging in the land that is threatened. Overall, I think it's in C tier. It's going to be higher than Shadow Flicker for sure.
Ooh, yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Next up, what do we got? It looks like Thunder Speaker. Okay.
Yeah,
I have a lot of prefacing that needs to be done for this spirit, and it's probably good we do it early here. All right, preface number 1. I have a group of spirits. I call them the Power 3. This is one of those Power 3. The Power 3 spirits are basically the top 3 spirits in the entire game. These are the 3 spirits that, in my opinion, if you bring them into a 4-player game, the other spirit is kind of irrelevant. These 3 spirits will take over the entire island and basically clean house. However, of these Power 3, I am not the biggest fan of Dahanchik, and this is preface number 2. I know everyone else, Thunder Speaker is their favorite fucking spirit. This is the spirit everyone talks about. Everyone's like, you can do so much damage with Manifest Incarnation or whatever, whatever the manifestation card is called. I forget the full name of it. But you do so much damage and you get so much value out of the Dahan with the lead the Ferocious Assault innate power. And everyone loves the spirit. I don't think there's anything wrong with this spirit. It is definitely overpowered. The special rule was built, sadly, before event cards, which means it didn't have the clause I think it should have, which is event card. Like, Dahan dying in the event card probably should have triggered her special rule, but it doesn't. So she got kind of grandfathered out of that rule because she was before event cards. I'll spoil it right now. Yeah, I definitely think she's A tier. But as you see when we get to the other Power 3, I prefer the other 2 members of the Power 3. I am not all on board on this Dahan chick. I think she's good. I think she does a lot more work than a lot of the other spirits, but I am not yet convinced that she is the best spirit in the entire game. I think all of the Power 3 have legs up and legs down on the other 3, which is why the 3 of them together make such a good combo, because they can compensate for the other one's weaknesses. But yeah, I'm not sold on everyone's hype around this spirit. I think she does her job supremely well. I think she's a great spirit, but she's overrated. I said it there. Fight me in the comments. She's overrated. She's not as good as you think she is. Fight me. All right, moving on.
We want to hit next.
It'd be the other mid complexity, which would be the let's do it. Yep.
Fear guy.
No.
Oh, rampant green. Okay.
Yeah, the Jolly Green Giant. All right. Well, I was saying a lot of people think the Dahan chick's the best spirit in the game. Well, this is where a lot of people are like, don't you mean she's the second best spirit in the game? because Jolly Green Giant here is, without a doubt, the most broken spirit in the game. And not only would this spirit qualify as A tier, it also qualifies as S tier. It does damage, not necessarily a lot of damage, but it does do damage to the invaders. It can clear out some plastic pieces. It can remove blight late in the game, unfortunately. Although not as late as you might think, because this spirit's idea of late game is 4 turns into the game. This guy explodes onto the map and just takes control of his board. And then if that wasn't good enough, he allows all the other spirits to explode onto the board and take control. This spirit is so good that when they came out with aspects for it in Nature's Incarna, they nerfed it. They made the spirit actively worse to compensate for how good this thing is. And it's not just it's not just Greater Than Games that nerf this. I have heard and talked to people, and myself included, don't even play this spirit very frequently because it basically just wins games by existing.
Yeah, because I know that me and you have talked about this before. It's like, I've only ever seen you play it when you're teaching other people how to play so that they can have fun.
Yeah, I use it as my teaching other people spirit. I'm like you guys. I'm gonna take this spirit. I'm sorry if you want to play it, but I'm gonna take this spirit. You guys take whatever spirit you want. And I do it because I know I can force the game into a state where it is going to be fun for them to play, because this spirit will ensure that whatever spirits they're playing explode onto the map and are far more powerful than they ever should be at the given time in the game state. This like I said, he could be an A tier, but I have to put him in S tier because, once again, the mere presence of him on the board means that other spirits are going to play differently. Different build avenues open up because they have the access to the proliferation that he provides.
They can suddenly now just hurl out presence at an astonishing rate.
Yeah, absolutely broken spirit.
You never really have to ever worry about his board because they're going to build. No, they're not.
They're not going to build. They're not going to ravage. And, did you destroy his presence? He doesn't care. He'll just put it back out.
Yeah.
He doesn't need cards to put out his destroyed presence. He can do it himself.
Did they blight the land? Well, mid-game, we'll just start picking that up for you.
Ridiculously good spirit. Absolutely phenomenal. And for those of you who are more experienced even than I am, and by the way, I have well over 150 games between the physical and the digital. I'm probably reaching, if not over, the 200 game mark, which is not to say a lot. I don't want to claim that I'm somehow the most played. No, there's people who played the game far longer than I have and far more times than I have. But Nevertheless, I would like to imagine that I've got a hefty number of games under my belt, and with each spirit.
For over a year now, we've been playing almost every single Sunday.
So while I will never claim to be a fantastic Spirit Island player, I do feel like I have enough experience to say that if you were to ask me and any other person with equal or better experience what the best spirit is, they're not going to say Thunder Speaker. That's kind of, I don't want to say a noob trap, because again, Thunder Speaker is an insanely good spirit. But the people who don't understand just how powerful proliferation is, they're the people who say Thunder Speaker is the best. The people who understand what proliferate, how
imagine Thunder Speaker going even faster.
The people who understand just how powerful proliferation is, and they understand why one specific minor power card, the only minor power card that allowed spirits to proliferate, was removed from the game by Greater Than Games. Those are the people who, when they're like, "What's the best spirit?" Like, oh yeah, it's the Jolly Green Giant, hands down.
Yeah, no question.
There's an argument to be made. There should be a tier between him and S. All right, now we get on to the high complexity spirits from the base game. And first up, we got Ocean, looks like here. Yep. And we kind of spoiled this one already when we were talking about S tier. But yeah, Ocean's also S tier. It, again, changes the game by allowing you to push things into the ocean where he gets energy and other benefits for them doing that.
Yep. So your push effects essentially now become destroy if they're on the coast.
Yeah, it's... He again fundamentally changes the game. Spirits play differently. They will take different power cards simply because this guy is in the game and should theoretically be on every board within the first turn or two. But yeah, Ocean is. We'll talk more when we get to the aspects, so I don't want to spoil anything too rough now. But Ocean is one of those spirits who, for whatever reason, was one of the best spirits in the game, and then they buffed him in his aspect for reasons that are beyond my comprehension.
His aspect is so fun, though.
Yeah, it is so fun. This is a ridiculously good spirit. If I had to guess, if I had to put him in a ranking that was below S, because again, of how we ranked our things, go back and watch our brief talk on that. He would probably be in B tier simply because he's limited to where he can put his presence and how much reach he has inland.
Yeah, and he's generally restricted to just coastal targets.
Yeah, generally speaking, and as a result, he requires other spirits to compensate for his weaknesses. The good news is he compensates by going, "Hey, if you scratch my back, I'll wipe out your coast." So it's a very tit for tat, but very Ocean's a great spirit, absolutely phenomenal. Love him.
Mm-hmm. Like fun to play too.
Yeah, probably
very unique.
Yeah, probably deserved B tier, but again, because of the way he changes the game, he's an S tier spirit. And lastly, of the base game spirits, at least not including the promos, which we'll get into next.
My personal favorite.
Yep, we get the Fear Guy. Yeah, we get the Fear Guy, bringer of dreams and nightmare. And this is Shadows Flicker Like Flame's older brother. This is what Shadows Flicker Like Flames wishes he could be.
Yeah.
This guy, as it says even on the back of his board, he basically enables fear victories outright. Now, in later expansions, and this is kind of the unfortunate aspect, is that in later expansions, triggering different fear victories, usually Fear 3, but in some cases Fear Victory, have become a lot easier with other spirits able to more easily pump out the equivalent fear. Because again, if you think of it, the fact that by playing any given spirit, you are putting 4 fear into the pool, that spirit is functionally required to produce that 4 fear to compensate for them existing. And this guy goes above and beyond that by a substantial margin. The problem is, like I said, power creep has caught up with him. Where this guy used to be probably A tier way back in the day when there was only 10 spirits in the game.
That, like first 1 or 2 expansions.
Yeah. He was probably easily an A tier spirit. Power creep has caught up with him. And as more and more spirits get added to the game, and as more and more spirits are able to more efficiently add their fear that they have brought with them into the pool, it has made him less and less valuable. In addition, a lot of other spirits who have similar control value to push, pull, and otherwise move invaders do it better. two in particular, which we'll talk about when we get to them. But overall, the power creep, in my opinion, has pushed him down to C tier, where he is more than viable. It's just there's plenty of other spirits who can do what he does. Maybe not necessarily better, but the other aspects they add in addition to their fear make them better than he is.
Yeah, it's because, like, obviously, just with his innate special rule, you can get 5 fear per city. Cool, you still have to kill that city, versus if you go, like we were talking about with Fire and Floods on some other people, 16 damage is going to get you a lot more than 5 fear.
Provided on up to
built up,
there,
yeah. But you also still have 2 lands that you get to cover with that, too.
Yeah. So like I said, power creep has unfortunately caught up with him. This used to be one of the best spirits, and now he lingers kind of in C tier,
where he is just in our dreams.
Yeah, I'm sorry to do that. I love Bringer of Dreams. He was the first spirit I ever played. Yeah. I loved him back then.
Same here.
Oh boy.
I mean, I still love him now. I'll still play him every now and then.
Yeah, I still pull him on occasion. It's just like I said. It's the things he offers. Other spirits offer a acceptable countermeasure, but then add more in a different facet that he cannot offer.
Yeah.
All right, so now we get to
the. We want to move to next.
Now we get to the promos for the base game, which is the Wildfire and the Snake. So we can do Wildfire first, I suppose.
Yeah, I'll let you start talking about Wildfire because you obviously have much experience under your belt.
Yeah, well, both Wildfire and the Snake are, well, I'll get to the Snake when we get there, but I've played a lot of games with both of these spirits. So Wildfire, as long as we talked briefly, let's talk more about the Power 3. Mm-hmm. Introducing Power 3 number 2, the Fire Dude, also known as Heart of Wildfire, or Heart of the Wildfire. This guy is fucking insane. There is no spirit to my... at least from all the ones I've played, including the multiple ones from Nature's Incarnate, nothing has the damage output and the damage consistency to match this guy. The raw damage numbers he can put out in any one turn, and again, consistently hit like 4, 5, 6 damage in any one turn between his innate and his power card, just his presence going out. It's phenomenal. He can just destroy the invader so frequently. Even on, like, again, we're assuming high difficulty games. I play a lot of, level 4, level 5, level 6 of different invaders. And so frequently, this guy not only wins his board within the first couple of turns to the point where the invaders can barely get onto the coast, but there's turns where he's got damage he can't even apply to things because they're all dead before he gets to the chance to apply that damage.
Yeah.
This guy is absolutely fucking insane. And easily one of the most powerful spirits, and why I count him as part of the Power 3. Which is why he goes right there. Mm-hmm. What? B tier? That's right. Because he has a downside. One that he by himself cannot compensate for. He will blight the island, and he is honestly, if you're not careful, he will get you killed. There is a finesse to playing this spirit, and understanding where you are placing your presence, and even which lands you're removing blight from. Because he requires the land to be blighted, but you don't necessarily want to put presence down in a blighted land because it'll cascade. So learning how to remove blight and put your presence down, and there's a finesse to it that if you're not careful, will quickly cause the invaders to take advantage of your misplays. This is a high risk, high reward spirit. So I recommend him. I recommend it. He's very fun to play, in my opinion. It does, like I said, it does take a little bit of finesse to get there, but he will blight a lot of his lands very quickly, and he cannot clean the blight very efficiently without drawing a few power cards. And even then, he's not going to get to play them very frequently. I shouldn't say that. Grass is one of his most important elements by a substantial margin, but he's not always going to be playing cards that clean blight. So it's you can expect to clean maybe 1 blight per turn due to his 1 innate, but he's probably going to be putting down more than 1 blight per turn. Whether it's because he blighted the island himself from putting his presence down, or because he just took a card such as Pillar of Flame, which if it targets a grassland or a wetlands will put down a blight. there's a lot of ways in which he's going to end up accidentally blighting the island. So again, he's B tier because other spirits have to overcome the fact that he is going to be responsible for a lot more blight than what they might be expecting.
His board will be clear, except for blight.
Yeah, there won't be any white plastic on his board, just a lot of black plastic.
Yep.
Very good spirit, though. One of the power 3. I prefer him over the Dahan chick because unlike the Dahan chick, he is not restrained by the Dahan to do his damage, and because he gets to do it consistently every single turn just by existing. He doesn't have to try and play power cards in the right way. One power card with grass and he's doing damage. Put a presence down, he does damage. His power cards do damage. Just he's an insane spirit. Again, of the power 3, he is one of my preferred over the Dahan chick. Though again, I'm not knocking her. Fight me in the comments if you don't like it. But I would say he is. I would argue that the fire dude's better than the Dahan chick.
I'm sure I know who your third.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get
Trinity is.
We're gonna get to we're gonna finish the holy trifecta eventually.
Oh yes, and I have no doubt that you would put him above even Wildfire.
Yeah. No spoilers though.
Nope.
Next up is the snake, and I again we're gonna preface this one a little bit. All right, cards on the table. This is my favorite spirit in the entire game, bar none. I'm going to do everything in my power to remove that bias while we're discussing it here. Because as much as I would love to say this is like the best spirit in the game, that's sadly so far from the truth. As we discussed, we want our spirits to be good earlier in the game, the better. And his early game it's there. He can sustain himself in the early game.
It's better than Easter Island.
Yeah, he can sustain himself in the early game, and under circumstances, he can win the early game. But we're not going to talk about extraneous circumstances, which require very specific power cards, and not just the one we've discussed previously before we were recording this. But if he gets the right power cards, he can definitely win his board before he wakes up. But it's few and far between where you'll be able to draw one of the handful of power cards that will enable him to win his board before he wakes up. You are at best going to be just playing a turn behind the invaders. In a best case scenario, you'll be playing with the invaders. Once he wakes up, there's no stopping him. This spirit can single-handedly win 4 boards by himself once he's woke up. I mean, if you trigger his level 3 Serpent Rouses in Anger and you've properly distributed your presence across, he can just destroy the entire island and win a game. Even if he doesn't necessarily destroy all of the plastic buildings, he will generate so much fear. I've seen this guy generate 3 fear cards off of 1 Serpent Rouses in Anger just by himself. Not all the other spirits combining all their powers to generate more fear cards. He just decided that, fuck it, we're going to generate 3 fear cards.
He woke up and he was angry.
This spirit is like, there is no spirit that can compare to the Snake's late game. It is the best late game. And I actually, a little side note, I respect Greater Than Games for releasing this spirit. And even for posting on the back of it, for putting in text that it probably is the strongest spirit, because it means that it gives them, by releasing this spirit as it is early on in the game, it means that they now know what they want their power gap to be, or their power cap, I should say, not gap, their power cap to be. They know this is what the strongest spirit is going to be. So they know all future spirits can be compared to that, and they can fix them based on that power level.
Well, it is canonically the island.
Yeah, it is canonically. That I think is the lore, right? It says the serpent grows tired swimming, decided to rest, drawing the earth around itself, and so the island was born. Although it does say right after that other stories have different claims, but it's basically, the snake is supposed to be basically the size of the island, if nothing else. I respect Greater Than Games for deciding this is going to be our limit. No other spirit will ever exceed the late game, anyways, power level of this spirit. This is going to be the
be all end all.
Yeah, which means they can, as a result, even though power creep is still a thing, as we discussed with the Fear guy, there is a limit to how far the power creep can go. So I respect that. I think I don't know if it was intentional or not. I would like to think it's intentional because it's a great little idea that they should put. He is, unfortunately, even though he's my favorite spirit, though, I think I got to put him in C tier. And I'm really tempted to put him maybe in D tier because his early game is very subpar. But I think, despite the fact that he does have a subpar early game, which we are, like I said, we value that. I think the fact that he can keep pace more or less with the invaders and he won't strictly outright lose his board, combined with the fact that once he wakes up, you've won the game, I think is just enough to bump him up from D to C tier.
Yeah, well, he can still be a decent support spirit in the early game.
He can be a very powerful support spirit, which is kind of what he wants to be doing generally early in the game. Again, unless you can draft an early major power that allows you to turn the tides. But yeah, unfortunately, my favorite spirit, I think I gotta put in C tier. Like I said, try and take my bias out. Maybe he should go in D tier. Make your arguments.
So let's actually have a bit of a discussion about that, then. Because I think he's better than River. Your thoughts on him being lower than Shadow's Flicker like Flame?
I don't know if
because if he was to go in D, he would then become lower than Shadow's Flicker and Flame. Is the point I'm trying to
Gotcha. Like I said, I don't know. I think, like I said, his early game is not horrendous. That's not fair, but it's a very, very poor showing. It's a very, very poor showing. Is his early game, but like I said, I think just due to the fact that he can sustain himself, there are ways by getting, say, an early major power that he can kind of maintain a grip on his board. And then again, the fact that once he wakes up, it's game over. The invaders have lost if he wakes up.
Yeah.
I think that's enough to put him here. I'm going to probably keep him lower C tier, though. I think that's fair. I think that just while his early game would probably limit him to D tier, I think his overall is just enough to push him into C tier. And I think that goes here, I think.
Okay.
Again, I'm trying to take my bias out.
Yeah. I do think Fear Guy is better than him because it is going to give you a more consistent victory.
Yeah. Yeah, put again, post in the comments. Like I said, I'm trying to take my bias out. Post in the comments if you think he should be in D tier. But I'm going to put him there for now. All right, so now we get to move on to Branch and Claw, the first expansion.
Yes. Do we want to start with my assumption, or do we want to start
the Panther? Okay. Let's do Sharp Fangs. The Panther. I used to call him the Wolf and still get a bad.
Yeah, that is not a wolf.
Yeah, it's not. It kind of, sort of, almost looks like a wolf in the art if you look at just the little box there.
We don't have a wolf spirit yet.
Not a true wolf. It's not until you look at like the full one where you see like his full body in the back there. That's where you can see more panther-like. More
and the feet as well.
That's what I'm saying. But the close-up here, there's not enough shadow, or there's too much shadow, I should say, to really like this. Be like, oh yeah, his face is the more scrunched feline face rather than the elongated canine face. But he is a panther. I've stopped calling him the wolf, or at least I've tried to. He is a panther. Or a leopard, I guess. Panther's just a type of leopard.
Yep.
But, okay, enough of that little debate. Oops, I scrolled down. It's going to screw up the... Oh, well. Yes, this is another one of my spirits I really enjoy. This guy is probably got one of, if not the best early game in the entire series.
He is very aggressive.
He is an insanely aggressive spirit. He can very quickly dominate his board, and he kind of has to, because sadly his late game leaves a little to be desired. His late game is not...
And that is partially self-inflicted, is it not?
Partially self-inflicted, partially part of the balance, I think. I think he was designed to be a stupidly powerful early game spirit, and to compensate, they made his late game subpar.
Yeah.
Not that he's going to be bad, but compared to a lot of other spirits, his late game is not particularly impressive. But again, we strongly value a powerful early game.
Mm-hmm.
He can, because of his growth that he picks 2, means he can put a presence out every turn, means he is always, always, always going to be getting a presence out. And I mean, they tried to limit him. Like if you look at his track, his energy track is 1 energy, 2 elements, then 2 energy, which is really rough trying to go down that track without using energy growth to compensate. And even his card play is 2 card, 2 card, then 3 card. All because they don't want you to trigger his ranging hunt too early.
Yeah.
Because it's his bread and butter. I mean, it's that ranging hunt. That was weird. But his ranging hunt's so powerful. It's just you watch the invaders explore, and on the next turn you just kill them before they can set down roots. It's ridiculous.
I guess we haven't really talked about why we value the earlier, like the tokens and why wilds is so good. Because I know we touched on wilds, but not why it's so beneficial, and the fact that it's denying an explorer, which also means you've denied a build, which also means you've denied a ravage, which also means you've denied
the blight. That's why the wild tokens are the most valuable. And he's in green, which means he can and will take cards that supply wilds.
We'll put out
in
wilds.
Addition to beasts. Beasts are his bread and butter. Mm-hmm. Everyone can argue their own build. I'll just briefly mention the build I like to do is to focus on taking out the invaders when they explore so that they can't build, and basically treat his beasts as if they are wilds in that regard, while simultaneously spreading out beasts so that he has at the minimum 1 beast per land, and then can move a beast into land to do 2 damage if he needs to take out a town type of a thing. Or multiple beasts. Like there's just I don't want to go too deep into my particular build, because my build is not necessarily anything optimal, and I don't want to claim that I know the optimal. All I know is that this guy will destroy his board, and on low level difficulties especially, this guy will clean house to the point where he will, within 2 or 3 turns, be on other spirits' boards, helping them clear out boards.
Oh yeah, but he's got plenty of mobility as well as all of that damage.
Yeah, very, very good spirit. Not in the power 3 though, as you may have noticed. And I say power 3 because there's one other spirit in Branch and Claw who will be joining us in the power 3. The final
mighty Treebeard.
The great and mighty Treebeard, keeper of the Forbidden Wilds. Probably, again, fight me in the comments, the best spirit in the entire game. There are people I've seen online in different forums claiming him the best. Other people claim Thunderspeaker. Between Keeper and Thunderspeaker are frequently the 2 that people are claiming are the best, outside of the obvious broken one. I fall in the camp of Keeper. Again, all 3 of the power 3, in my opinion, of the holy trifecta here, all 3 of them have their own downfalls. The fire guy blights the island, so you have to play around that. Treebeard does take 2 turns to get going. He's not useless, thankfully, because his token of choice is wild,
which, as we just discussed.
So while he's a little bit slow, he is by no means weak during his 2 slower turns. But turn 3 onwards, he hits the gas, and he does not let up.
Yes.
He will frequently be shitting out 2 presents per turn. The only time he doesn't is his 1 reclaim, until he hits 5 card plays, at which point he reclaims every turn, because you have 5 card plays and 9 energy. Why would you not reclaim?
You have nothing better to do at that point.
So he proliferates extremely fast, extremely consistently. He has, again, ridiculous damage between Punish Those Who Trespass, his innate, Towering Wrath.
Yeah.
He uses green, they gave a spirit with all this damage.
He's essentially clearing out the space and then saying, no one is going here. Clear next space. No one is going here. Clear next space.
Yeah, it is.
He never has to backtrack.
It is such a phenomenal spirit. He is probably, and again, there are other spirits who are really good, which is why I won't claim the best at this, but he is probably one of the, if not the best spirit at pushing the invaders from the inland to the coast and then maintaining that hold by just constantly throwing green all over the coast. Every time they try and explore, nope, can't get back out of it.
Yeah.
You're not going to get back on the fucking board. He can just gain control of his board. He does have one itsy-bitsy tiny weakness in that it is difficult for him to get into lands that are already blighted before he's there. However, in the event that he's there before the land blights,
It's fine.
He's fine. Yeah, he might lose a presence in certain scenarios when they ravage or something. But as long as he has one presence left over in a land, even if it's got blight, he's fine. He's got control there. He can just put another presence in the land. It's just getting into those lands, and even then, it's a minor inconvenience because he has reach. He does, punish those as range 0, but Towering Wrath isn't.
Yeah.
Plus, he's in green, which means he has access to blight removal. He has a blight removal card of his own, actually, from the beginning of the game. So he has ways around his one, if you want to call it a weakness. The Holy Trifecta has now been ranked. I am in the ballpark that Treebeard is the best. Then I would argue Wildfire. Then I would say Dahanchik. Like I said, fight me in the comments if you think it's another way around. All right, now we get to move on to the first expansion. Well, the first major expansion, which would be Jagged Earth.
That's both these sets.
All right. Jagged Earth. Oh boy, I was so excited when this came out. This was such a phenomenal expansion.
Yes, we got a lot of good.
Badlands was great, a great concept. There were so many great spirits that were added to it.
Well, he's right at the front there. So
what do
we just?
Oh, you want to start with Starfall? All right, we will start with Starlight. Seeks its form, which is probably fair. Because we were just talking about how there were a lot of great spirits. And Starfall is... it's a fun spirit. It's a fun spirit. It's very fun. I hesitate to put Starlight too high on this tier list because, in my experience, as much as I love Starlight, I do enjoy playing Starlight. I played many, many games of Starlight. Its customizable ability allows it to be just a little too much of a wild card.
Yeah, I was going to say its biggest strength, the reason you play it, is the exact reason why it is not a phenomenal spirit.
Yeah,
it is only a good spirit.
In my opinion, it relies on getting one, maybe even two, preferably major powers relatively early. Let's say by turn 4, it should have 2 majors, maybe turn 5 type of thing. But it wants to get at least 1, preferably 2 early major powers, and it kind of builds itself around those major powers. Now, it's definitely got the unique cards and the setup to allow it to do this. The problem is it's building around 2 cards that it doesn't know from the beginning of the game what it's trying to do.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really have a direction to go in until it drafts those cards. And if those cards don't synergize, it can start to pull Starlight into 2 different directions, which hurts. So, I mean, obviously, if that's the case, just ditch one of those majors and keep the other one and then focus.
Try and find something a little bit more aligned with what you're looking
for. The problem is that if you hit a situation where you have to ditch one of your 2 majors to try and find something more synergistic with the major you want to keep, you're now spending time looking for more synergy instead of getting to play those cards at maximum power. So Starlight, like I said, or like we were trying to get across, is its greatest strength, its versatility, is also its greatest weakness, in that 1 or 2 bad draws can really it won't screw over the spirit, but it'll slow it down.
Yeah,
it'll slow the spirit down.
It'll need a little bit of course correction.
Yeah, and that's all it takes. Is despite all the cards it gets to look at, by turn 3, you've probably looked at 16 to 20 cards between the 2 decks. But all it takes is even 1, let alone 2 of those to be bad draws that don't synergize with what you set out to do based on, say, generally your major power. And suddenly you're spending extra time. You're spending extra time trying to get back on track, trying to find that synergy again.
Yeah, that's part of why I personally don't really play Starlight all that often, is because I like consistency. Obviously, I am a big fan of Grinning Trickster, who we haven't gotten to yet. So I do love the aspect of chaos, but I still like consistent chaos.
I would say he lands in C tier, personally. I'm debating on what side of Fear Guy. I think the consistency of Fear Guy puts him here.
Lower than Snake.
You think
Snake, you still know what's going to happen. It still has a role that it can play.
True, but I think this is where I'm going to have to bring up, again, trying to remain unbiased, that because the Snake's early game is again, kind of subpar, whereas his early game is going to be, generally speaking, okay.
Okay.
The consistency of his turns going forward are in question, but I think his early game is better than the Snake's. So I think that earns him a spot here, even if his total gameplay is not as consistent as the Snake.
I can see that argument, yeah.
That's my argument. So, unless you want to say something, unless you got an argument that you think he should be below the Snake. That's my reason for why you should be above the Snake.
Again, it just goes back to I value consistency more than I like to know what my game plan is going into something.
Right.
And with the Snake, it's I go in knowing I'm going to play that support role, or if I get lucky with a draw, I can swap up to a slightly more different path. But I play a lot of RNG games. I play Warhammer. Magic is not one of them, but there's still a level of consistency that you can use.
Right. Okay. All right. Then I'll do it. As long as we're using your argument to boost the Snake, so it makes me feel better about not letting my bias.
It wasn't your argument.
It wasn't my bias seeping through.
He tried to argue against. Yeah.
Okay. Next up,
Lure.
Lure. Oh, there we go.
One of my favorites.
All right, so now we gotta try and take your bias out of it. Although this is one of those spirits that's, even with bias, it's a good spirit.
It is a really good spirit. So many tokens that you can throw out.
Many. Yeah, we were talking about how Wilds is a good token. Well, this guy not only uses Wilds, he uses Disease, he uses Badlands, he uses Beast.
Yeah.
It's Strife if you can find some card that allows him to maybe
he's got the opposite weakness of Ocean in that he cannot touch coasts.
At least not with his presence.
True, not with his presence. Generally, he can pull stuff off of the coast. But some of his, Never Heard From Again, which is generally going to be removing explorers and whatnot, is range 0, so you're not going to be able to hit those, and also has the restriction of only inland. But
one of the grab the explorers for that power from his other one.
Yes, one of the few spirits who can technically move cities, while he does not actually move a city. He converts it to explorers and then shuffles them over before consuming them. But
which don't underestimate that. Spirits who can remove cities, especially relatively early, he needs 3 card plays or 2 card plays plus his
generally.
So he can with 2 card plays and his growth options. He can hit a city.
Yep. Generally, I like to hit the animal and then just progress down energy track only.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you that it's he does not have a spirit track that enables him to go heavy into card plays. Otherwise, he's just going to be reclaiming for multiple turns in a row.
Yep.
So he definitely doesn't want more than 2 card plays. Maybe you could squeeze out 3 if your other spirits at the table are able to support you with card draw or reclaimability. But generally, I think he wants to stick to like 2 card play, at least until he has some more energy. You don't necessarily have to go to 5, though I'd recommend it at that point. But you definitely want to hit at least the 3 energy on his track before you consider going into the deeper into the card play track.
He doesn't have the fastest early game, but he's still going to eliminate a lot of that central part of the board, which is really key in giving him a good setup to progress into later stages.
Yeah,
because he can what's the call, or back in Ever Inward, where he's getting to pull 2 towns, 2 explorers and whatnot.
Yeah,
he can pretty much pull everything from the center of the board into 1 land.
Yeah,
and pick it up either in the slow phase or on his next turn if he's got some setup.
Yeah, and the other thing that Never Heard From Again only targets explorers. He does come with a unique power that just deals raw damage, so he can deal with other structures as well.
Yes. Although that is based off of tokens that you have.
Yeah, thankfully he shits those out like they're fucking candy.
That he does.
I would argue for him to be an A tier. I don't know if I can put him higher than the leopard, though. I think the leopard.
Don't think I would. He doesn't have fast enough damage.
Yeah, I think the leopard's early game wins out.
Yes.
Even though Lure does have
a little bit of setup before versus leopard can just
he comes out of the
where
gate
he
running.
needs to be. Yeah.
Leopard hits the ground running. Lure takes just a turn or two to kind of set up.
Do we just want to keep progressing in order then?
Yeah, we'll progress.
At least
Kind
until
of, sort of what they got here, yeah, which is many minds. This is a fan favorite, from what I understand, in my perusal and going through the different forums, the good forums, not Reddit. Fuck you bastards, Reddit.
I can say I enjoy playing him more than the Leopard,
That's
but I also know he is nowhere near as good. I at least don't have that bias. I know I'm playing not trashy spirit, just not. It is not a strong spirit by any means.
Yeah, it's a fan favorite. A lot of people value it highly, and for good reason. There's a lot to be enjoyed. Not only enjoyed, but there's a lot the spirit does well. I personally find it to be a acceptable spirit. On higher difficulties, it does, in my opinion, struggle just a little bit. Mostly because it's defend 10 option for Beast and Beast. What's it? Beset and Confound the invaders, not Beast. That's why I'm confused.
Yeah.
But the defend 10, even the defend 7, which is, again, as we talked about, things like Habsburg are going to be doing 8 damage very quickly. France does 6 to 7 damage pretty quickly.
Yes.
A lot of the different invaders can do a lot of damage within the first few turns, the first few ravages, which means this guy needs to be hitting that defend 7 in order to stop these, let alone the defend 10.
The other, and I do have more issues to add on.
Yeah.
The
thing I'm trying to get across is, once again, defend, as valuable as a mechanic it is, it's once again proving in this spirit's case to be just a little bit too weak, in my opinion. It takes you just too long to get to a stage where you can get the high level defend you're going to need to actually block the invaders' damage, to prevent blight, to prevent them from killing the Dahan that are going to theoretically be counterattacking. Mm-hmm. In addition, my other problem is that while he has, I want to say 2, correct me if I'm wrong, it might be 3, but I think it's 2 cards in his unique pool that can move the Dahan, they don't move a lot of Dahan. One, I think, moves up to 2, and the other, I think, moves, it's a choice. You can move either, if I recall correctly, it's move 1 Explorer, Town, or Dahan per beast you have beyond the first beast in this land, I believe is how it reads. I don't have the card on me at the moment to verify that.
I think it's something push more than Dahan.
Well, like I said, it's an Explorer, a Town, or a Dahan.
Yes.
Per beast beyond the first in target land, I think is how it reads. I don't remember.
I do think that's correct, yeah.
It's something like that. So, again, it's not limited to just Dahan, but it doesn't really necessarily get to push a whole bunch of Dahan into one land, drop a bunch of defense, and let them defeat the invaders during the Ravage. It can only move 1 or 2, so it has to hope there's some Dahan already in the location where it's going to be dropping that defend. And other than that, it's kind of just praying the event card flips something beast-related that lets the beast do the work. Because there will be an absolute monster truckload of beasts all over his island. More so even than the leopard.
One of his innates is just add 2 beasts.
Yeah. His board is generally going to have more beasts on it even than the leopard. So yeah, when the beast event flips with a beast effect, he is going to capitalize on it like no one else.
I also think that he is actually while he himself is not good, he makes the leopard even better to play alongside, because now he no longer has to sacrifice his presence to get more beasts. He can just borrow a couple from many minds.
Right? I mean, not that it stops him from sacrificing presents, but now it's just 1 more beast. But the 2 do have an absolutely amazing synergy together. Yeah. And if you were to ever play, I don't know, maybe I kind of hope they do this in the next expansion. They do like Super Invaders, where you play 1 board with 2 spirits on it, and the invaders just get this
really aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I would love to see.
I wonder if you could just do it where every single edge counts as a coastline. So you only really have like 1 or 2 inland lands.
Something absolutely ridiculous like that. Some sort of a scenario. Just play 2 spirits on 1 board. So I'd love to see these 2 just watch them absolutely go. Just like
Oh, and of course you have to play it against Russia too.
Obviously.
But to add on to what you were saying about his beset and confound, it is also a large commitment of beasts to one land. I personally have not liked doing that. I feel like generally having 2 or 3 locations with your presence and beasts to shuffle around as needed is better. And so I've never actually been able to get that many beasts into one land.
That's fair. And as we said, because defend just does, and his defend does scale, which is rare. Defense scaling cards are rare. Actually, we didn't even talk about that. That's actually one thing the Snakes got is a defend card that scales.
That's right. Yeah.
And not only that, he's got the best defend card in the game. And I know we're kind of shitting on defend here. I'm just going to go back a little bit, but
generally, if that defend can't keep up, but when it scales, now you're giving it a better chance at least of keeping up.
But the one thing that even though 4 defend, 5 defend, even from the Snakes, Aegis is not necessarily going to be enough. The fact that he can hit one land that actually hits everything adjacent to that land, he can just that is.
There's some boards where you can hit all but one essentially off of that one card.
He can hit the fact that he hits so many lands means that even if his lands specific are threatened beyond his defendability, he can kind of use that as a way to support his allies by casting the spell or the card. I keep saying spell, but that's too much magic. But by casting the Aegis at the edge of his territory, which would go into theirs, allowing it to stack with their defend. He's got a very powerful defend card. And one of the few times I'm going to actually actively praise defend is the Snake's Aegis is actually quite good. And again, it has some small scaling involved in it. It not necessarily enough, but it can scale.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to Many Minds. We got sidetracked there. I would say again, just due to the limitations defend usually brings with it, and the fact that this guy is so heavily focused on that defend and his Dahan movement without drawing cards is not great. It's kind of just acceptable. I think that he just struggles, in my opinion, from playing him myself. He just struggles a little bit too much on the higher difficulties. I think I got to put him there.
As much as I love him, I do agree. Again, really fun to play. Not a great spirit. Good spirit, not great.
Yeah. I know he's a fan favorite, so we're probably going to get a lot of flack for putting him in B tier. But I think that's where he sadly has to be.
Yeah.
It sucks, but it's
maybe one day he'll get an aspect to help him. Does he have any at the moment? I don't think he's got one yet.
I think he does. I don't recall him having an aspect.
Who we want to hit next?
Tiny.
Sounds good.
All right. Oh shit! I probably can't call him Tiny.
Stone's unyielding.
Yeah, Stone's unyielding endurance or defiance. Yeah. I call him Tiny because I play Dota and there's a rock monster in that game that looks very, very similar to this guy, and his name is Tiny. So I just call him Tiny. Yep. I got a nickname for pretty much every character, and I apologize if I start using them interchangeably with the actual name and it starts to confuse people.
I don't apologize. You should accept these nicknames.
So Stone's Unyielding Defiance is definitely an interesting spirit, what with his energy track also being his card play track, more or less, and his card play track basically just being mountain element.
Or Earth, I guess.
Yeah, Earth element. He's a really fun spirit. I will give him that rep. I love playing Tiny. It's very fun. The fact that he relies heavily on his let them break themselves means that he's one of the spirits who can't really get ahead of the invaders. He can't, when the invaders explore, unless he has drafted a card that can deal with explorers, he kind of just goes, I'll get them after they build. I'll get them later. Yeah. And while that's not necessarily bad, it's not, in my opinion, best possible gameplay, because by letting them build and then eventually even ravage, he has to wait that long, means that they're going to be exploring from those locations that he lets them build up so that he can let them break themselves. which means he doesn't necessarily have full control over his board early on, and he can get there as the game progresses and he starts to wreck the invaders over time. But even once he finally gets them to the coast, he functionally doesn't have them at the coast. He has them one land in from the coast because he's going to let them build at the coast before he can destroy them via the Ravage. Again, outside of any cards he picks up. But we can't assume he's got cards that are going to do it. His 2 innate, he does have 2 unique cards that destroy towns, admittedly, or one deals damage. They could theoretically destroy cities. The other one destroys towns, or deals 1 damage to all structures. But regardless, the point is that his ability to contain the invaders at the coast is much more limited than other spirits because he relies heavily on that let them break themselves. That said, his special rule is phenomenal. The ability to pay energy to take the blight the invaders are going to be dealing to the land that he honestly wants to let them deal, not the blight, but the damage he wants to let them deal to the land because that's how he triggers break, is such a phenomenal thing. And as a result, gets him slotted into S tier. Not because he's fantastic and good and can compete with the A tier spirits or the B tier spirits, but again, because his ability to control blight by not taking it off the card, well, it does potentially, if you're not careful, put him in a position, him specifically on his board, in a position where cascades could potentially become more frequent if he's not careful. It's so amazing to functionally be playing a 4-player game with only 3 boards in terms of how the blights can be added.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to be letting the blight get added from the blight card to his board. So you're playing 3 boards with 4 spirits.
You're playing 4 boards worth of blight with 3 boards.
Yeah, that's a better way for it. Yeah. So once again, it enables other spirits to play a little bit more aggressive, or even take cards that, it might be cards that they want, but they can pass up another card. I want this card.
But Dire Metamorphosis.
Yeah. There's cards that the other spirits can just suddenly take that gives them access to things like Dire Metamorphosis. Or once again, maybe you're a spirit say, Treebeard. Or maybe you're in a state where Treebeard wants to take a card under circumstances that clears Blight because he might be in a situation where he needs to clear Blight. But he sees a card in that same draft of cards, that Blight card, that deals damage and that will help trigger his Punish Those Who Trespass innate. And now he's kind of torn, going, do I take my aggressive card? Do I take the defensive card? Well, if Tiny's in the game, he can take the aggressive card because Tiny can facilitate extra blight being added without it harming the island. So again, it enables spirits to play a little bit differently, which is where he lands in S tier.
Yes, I do think that below Ocean is the correct spot.
Yeah, I would say Ocean is better of the S tier spirits. Next up, what do we got? What do you got there? Fractured
Days.
Fractured Days. Okay. Well, it's not going to be a surprise to fucking anybody.
I am still trying to comprehend exactly how to play this spirit.
Yeah, this is the spirit that that basically I shouldn't say invented because the Jolly Green Giant was around the world. But this is a spirit that took the concept of, alternating how the game is played just by existing and to its absolute peak. His cards are meta cards. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. He is solid just utility.
Yeah. Well, his cards are just also meta, affecting his abilities, where they can affect the invader deck,
yeah.
the event deck,
the fear cards,
the board. This board doesn't get to activate. This board activates twice. It's the most meta thing in this game, and as a result, how could he not be in our S tier as we classified it? I mean, this is literally a spirit who fundamentally changes how the game is played. He is an extremely, extremely difficult spirit to master, and I don't even want to pretend that I know how to play him effectively.
I've played him so many times, and I still do not understand what I am doing when I play him.
I cannot claim mastery. I cannot claim expertise. I can claim that I have discovered a build that lets you on turn 2 trigger both your innates at max power. I don't know if it's a good build, but I figured out how to do it. It makes for a very powerful turn 2. Your follow-up turn is not necessarily going to be that impressive, but
yeah. But I mean, it does feel like him that he kind of fluctuates between turns. He's going to have really bad turns followed by really good solid turns. Because we've had games where, like you were talking about, the one board does nothing and the other board does double. And we've had that essentially win games for us because we've had one board that was winning and one board that was struggling. And it's like, well, the board that's winning will have everything happen twice because there's no white pieces there. And this board will do nothing, so we don't have to think about that anymore.
I really don't know how to, like, I can't rate the Spirit anything less than S because I don't know where he would go. I honestly, like, there's a part of me like he belongs in D tier because his innate card or his innate abilities and his unique power cards don't really like affect his board state a lot necessarily. But then again, he's A tier because he can fundamentally he has to be in S tier because of our ruling system. But I don't know where I would put him if he wasn't in S tier. He could be anywhere.
It purely depends on skill. And also the skill of the people you're playing. You can be a master, in my opinion, at Fractured Days, but if everyone else is not on that same level and able to solidly win games, then you're going to struggle because of them. Because you don't really have a good way to handle your own board, in my opinion. So you need somebody who is going to, at least one person to win their own board. So you have an available option for the
4 times
double,
sideways.
4 times sideways. You have to have insane mastery, knowledge, and just management of your time, because that is a very necessary resource. You have to have a really good understanding of all of the game's mechanics and how they interact. As well as when it sometimes, and utilize that knowledge to determine whether now is a good time to do some effect or not. Because, he can do a lot. Because he's got that one card that's like, if you have Dahan, create another Dahan and push some. If there's invaders, you ravage, and I forget what the other 2 effects were.
Blight, I think it's blight removal, I believe, right?
I think so, yeah. If there's blight and nothing else.
Yeah, something like that. I was talking about the fire dude being high skill, high reward. This guy,
he takes the cake.
Yeah, there's high skill, high reward as the fire dude. This guy is max skill, max reward. I will say, be wary if you're a little bit newer to board games. I don't want to say Spirit Island, although because there are people who are just their experience with other board games and not to mention just mechanical properties can sit down and pick up this game and they'd be able to play him to some extent efficiently. But if you're newer to board games and to a lesser extent Spirit Island, probably be careful if you're picking this Spirit or just avoid him. There is, like I said, there is definitely a skill ceiling with this guy. And it is a huge barrier to entry to learn how to play this guy.
Yes.
He is in some regards
because he's also one of the only spirits who can technically reverse backwards on his presence track.
He is a powerful spirit due to his ability to warp the meta game. The ability to switch the invader deck around, the event deck around. Just there's so much he can do. It's like putting him in the game. If you got someone who knows how to pilot this dude, assuming everyone else can play the game to some high level of efficiency, this guy can single-handedly just decide the game in as long as other players know what's going on. But at the same time, if you got someone who, and I don't know how else to phrase this, but someone who's a little bit more incompetent on this guy, you're going to lose the game.
Yeah.
He's going to be the reason you lose the game.
Yep.
Yeah, but definitely S tier due to just how much he does. Again, just change the game as a whole. All right, what's next? Shifting memory of ages. I don't know if I have a nickname for him.
Yeah, I don't really either. There's no good reference to assign.
Yeah. But yeah, shifting memory of ages.
Another one of my favorites.
Yeah.
The ability to not have to worry about tossing cards to gain power cards is really good. The ability to essentially get whatever elements you need, really good for consistency. I have mentioned I like my consistency. He's not necessarily super strong, but he does what he does very well.
Yeah. I would argue, and I'm sure many yourself included, would agree that he, similar to Starlight, is a bit reliant on major powers.
Yes.
He needs to pick at least one, again, maybe two, if you can make it work early on in the game, and kind of focus on those, because his innate powers are pretty wimpy in terms of how much impact they have on the island. And his unique cards are also extremely wimpy in terms of their impact on the island. So again, he's very, very reliant on major powers, and his special rules allow him to, again, like you said, he pick up major powers without having to forget cards. So he has the ability to very easily acquire major powers without the drawback normally associated with them.
Yes.
And his ability to generate elements and hold on to those elements until he needs them means that it's easy for him to trigger thresholds frequently.
Yeah, his biggest thing is he doesn't really have a strong early game at all. Like, obviously you can just pick up majors and toss them out, but you are only getting one growth option, and you don't really want to be taking +9 energy every turn.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, once in a while
give you good.
Yeah, once in a while it comes in handy though.
Yeah. He also does not acquire element markers very fast early on as well. So yeah, like it was said, you kind of want to snag a major or two and then begin to shape your element markers off of those. Once you hit late game, you can get fairly consistent element markers, especially if you are planning to hit one space multiple times, due to his improved Observe the Ever-Changing World. But it is hard-pressed to get the full 3 out of that. Generally, the most consistent that I've gotten out of that is 2, which would mean max you can get is 3 in a turn. At least until you start unlocking the option on his track. But yeah, he's consistently inconsistent. Or no, sorry, flip that around. Inconsistently consistent.
All right. What are you thinking then? C
I think
tier?
he's
or does
better.
He count as B tier due to his reliance on luck of the draw? Because again, I don't know. We didn't really touch on this actually. I shouldn't say again. Because he does kind of rely heavily on major powers, it is possible, as again unlikely as it may be, that he whiffs.
Yes.
If not once, or if not twice, then maybe once. Which is to say, he gets major power. Like, major powers, strictly speaking, are not going to be bad. But again, because of his limited impact on the board through his innates and his unique, he needs major powers that have big impact on the board. And if he draws 4 major powers that have minimal impact on the board, not that they're bad cards, it just means now he's behind.
Yes.
So I don't know if that counts him as B tier for having a drawback of he relies on the major powers, or if he just...
I would say he's somewhere
C tier,
low B or somewhere above Starlight. Because obviously he is more consistent than Starlight in what he does.
If he were in C tier, I would put him above Fear Guy even, my personal opinion. I just don't know where you think if he should go low B or if maybe the top of C.
Because we already have so much in C, let's put him in low B for now, and we can adjust if need be.
That's fair. That's fair.
Because I lean towards high C, but again, that category is currently
high C is disgusting.
I
Is that even a thing? Do people still drink high C?
don't think so, no. Not that I've ever seen anyway.
that was a thing back when I was a kid. That was all the things that they brought to, like soccer, the high C little fruit flag kind of thing. Oh, those are disgusting. I was a Capri Sun kid.
Oh no, I didn't have either.
All right, next up,
Volcano. He's right there in the top middle.
Yeah, all right, Volcano. Oh man! Now, as much as I would love to say he's a part of the Holy Triumvirate, Holy Trifecta.
I mean,
he is not. Yeah, Triumvirate. He is not. I love this spirit, but he does not have the damage consistency of the Fire Dude. He does not have the explosive, or not the explosive. He has the damage. He has damage output, I should say. But he doesn't have the consistency damage of the Fire Dude. His is a little bit more variant. I mean, it's controlled variant. You control whether you want to do the eruption or not. So in that regard, it's consistently. Is this the consistently inconsistent?
Consistently inconsistent. Yeah.
I don't know.
Or inconsistently consistent.
It's how you choose. Either way, his total damage output is not on the same level as the fire guy, whether it's consistent or otherwise. He doesn't have the overarching just board dominance that Treebeard or that Thunder Speaker has. But he does have one thing we briefly touched on, is he gets +1 range to all of his abilities as long as he has 3 presence or more in a single mountain. And that, as we said before, should never be overlooked. His innates are immune to that effect, which is unfortunate, but his power cards aren't.
I mean, but you're getting the equivalent of a really tiny version of the Snake's Earthquake.
Yeah. But the thing is, his power cards aren't. And as we said, power cards, especially major power cards, are balanced around their range. If you've never tried this, which I'm guessing you're not, you've tried this before, but just the next time you're playing Volcano, even if it's not the best card in the situation, grab a card at range 0 and just start using it at range 1. Again, the difference it makes is outstanding. How much of a difference this +1 range makes. Or get a card at range 2 and start using that.
0 cards are already so good, hence why they have such a range restriction. Yeah. And to get that little bit of extra, or if you can combo that with, like, what is it, Sky Stretches to Sea?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Sky Stretches to Shore is another one that, again, breaks the again, when it breaks those range requirements, it's so ridiculous what you can get away with. And this guy is there's actually a spirit who does it a little bit better, but this is one of the few spirits who can really just abuse that the range limitations on cards by going, range 0. Oh, well, I'm still going to hit him with it.
Yeah.
Like I said, next time you're playing him, grab a range 0. Just try hitting at range 1. It's so fun. Or grab a range 2 and start hitting at range 3 and just going, oh my God. Like
I can reach other boards.
It's absolutely. Again, the biggest one is the range 0, because most spirits, their reach by putting presence elsewhere will help compensate for long range powers in terms of getting a range 2. They just target from a different presence to get that reach. But again, the big one is turning range 0s into range 1. Oh my God, it is so nasty. It is absolutely disgusting. Again, high damage output, very consistent. I don't know what side of the Panther I want to put him on.
I think he's before the Panther, because he's still not that great of an early game, is he? Panther has better early game.
Yeah, you think here? I think that's fair. The Panther does have a very powerful early game, whereas he does probably take 2 turns, I would say, to really kind of come online. Again, he does have a board-ending ultimate, so to speak, in his eruption level 4. It's the next best thing to the Snake's Earthquake in terms of just deciding the game's over.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, though, that and I'm just going to say this right now to help out any new people. If you're playing on higher difficulties, it is not always going to be your best option to high stack the Volcano and go for that super eruption. In lower difficulties, it's a lot simpler to get away with that, and it's really fun, I will admit, to do it. But in higher difficulties, again, the damage output, the invader's ability to explore rapidly, you're going to have to do a lot of little eruptions. And it's just what you're going to have to do, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to get the super eruption off. But damn, is it not so fun?
Do you think being forced in that playstyle makes him, and this is definitely the bias speaking, but do you think it makes him worse than Lure?
I don't think it is. I think under normal circumstances, I would say he's better than Lure, if only, again, because his ability to turn range 0 to range 1 is, again, such an underrated feature of just, not this spirit, but just in general of this game.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done it before. What was that one? The one, spill bitterness into the earth,
Yeah.
which is supposed to damage your presence and shit. He's like, nope.
What if it did?
Yeah. What if I didn't have the drawback to this card?
Yeah.
Let's find out. Oh, turns out it's really good when you don't have it. Okay. Next up, what do we got here?
We got 3 left from this expansion.
Looks like the lizard's next on the tier list maker here.
Okay.
The lizard.
Vengeance as a burning plague.
Vengeance as a burning plague. Sometimes called the lizard, sometimes called Charmander. Even though he's kind of liquid.
It kind of jumps all around.
This is such an interesting spirit. When I first got Jagged Earth, I wanted to play this spirit so badly. And I played him so many times, and I could not figure out why it didn't work. I could not. I'm like, why is the spirit not working? Why does he feel so bad? I found some help online, some people who are better at this game than I am, and they kind of gave me some pointers. Like here's a couple of different. They showed me a couple of different builds that would work based on different scenarios, and kind of allows you to adapt as the game goes. And now this is one of my favorite spirits. This guy is a monster. He does not, again, we're talking damage consistency here. He does not have that comparatively to the Fire Dude or the Volcano even, since he does require Blight to get a lot of his value, and he, to a lesser extent, wants 2 Blight or to somehow spit out his own Badlands to help compensate. But in the later parts, I don't want to say later, but in the mid game, we'll say that's probably favorite. In the mid game, he kind of just explodes on and just starts destroying everything. It just will cost the board a bit,
just a little bit.
It'll cost the board a little bit, and the rest of the players at the table a little bit in order to get to the point. But once he takes off, he can very quickly take control of his board.
He also has a large diversity in what is available to him. He has damage, he has forms of utility and control, he has forms of fear generation.
Yep. He is oftentimes limited by the way his innates work, since they are each one is very, very heavy in one element. So as a result, he kind of has to choose on any given turn which of his 2 innates he's going to focus on. Typically, I would argue for Savage Revenge, his slow power that deals direct damage, is usually your better option when available, because it's, again, consistency, and also because, while disease you can get a lot of damage. I've seen a lot of damage, even I've done a lot of damage with the epidemics run rampant. The thing is that oftentimes disease is, even for him, better spent to stop the build than to generate that one fear. There are exceptions, and you will find many of them as you play the spirit.
Yeah,
but
probably a bit more early on when you want that little bit of light to first set up.
Yeah, but as the game progresses, you'll realize very quickly that there's not as much disease as you might have thought. Sometimes you are able. There's been times where I've been able to gather a good chunk of like 2, 3, even 4 diseases in some rare occasions into one land, and then even dropping level 2 of that innate just can wreck face, especially if it's blighted or has a Badlands of its own, or God forbid both. But yeah, his damage is a little inconsistent. He does take a few turns to really kind of get going. I would say his need, more or less, to have a blighted island rather than just being able to be good right out of the gate means that I would put him in B tier. I just don't know on which side of the lightning bird. You think above the lightning bird?
Yeah.
All right, put him there.
Because he's got better innates.
That's true. or at least more consistent.
Yes.
That's fair. We can put him there. I think that's acceptable. Everyone will fight us in the comments for our placements, anyways.
His early game isn't necessarily fast. It's all again setup, but he normally the reason you want to rush to that early game is so that you don't have all of that damage for the mid late game. He wants that damage for the mid late game.
Yeah.
So he is technically okay with giving up the early for that.
Yeah. And he does have the ability to put 2 presents per turn, which again we've talked about proliferating being very valuable. Now, unlike other spirits, he doesn't use that proliferation to expand his reach. I mean, he does, but he doesn't. His goal is basically to build a sacred site just so that when they ravage, he has a presence left over in the land.
Yeah, he's ready for this low phase.
Yeah, he's not a big fan of sacred sites on slow cards. If you're gonna take a sacred site power on him, you hopefully gonna want it fast because chances are on the slow phase he's not gonna have a sacred site there anymore.
There's not a lot of power cards that are sacred sites that are fast, is there? I think most of them are slow.
I would suspect. I don't know the exact math on that one, but I would suspect there are more slow. But there are definitely sacred sites that are fast.
Yeah.
Next up, what do we got here? Shroud of Silent Mist, the Grim Reaper himself.
Yes.
Slow killing everybody that exists. All right. This is a fun spirit. I do love this spirit.
I
very
still not figured out how to play this one.
Very fun spirit to play just because of his unique method of how he kills the invaders slowly over time rather than just all at once.
Yeah. He kind of lets them slowly suffer.
Yeah.
Until they're gonna ravage, and then.
Yeah. It's an interesting spirit. I don't think this is necessarily as good as, say, Vengeance. I think Vengeance aggression level is a little bit higher than this guy's. Again, mostly because this guy slow kills, but the thing is that his slow killing oftentimes means that you're having to let the land that's going to build, and or let the land that's going to ravage. He has some ways to protect the land, sort of. He has some ways to protect himself when those lands ravage, but chances are, more often than not, the lands that he is in and trying to kill the invaders are going to blight sometime before the invaders die. Chances are. There are exceptions, but he does have the ability to move the invaders around to some extent. Innately, only explorers, but he does have, especially in his elements of wind, water, and moon, the ability to move towns as well, depending on the cards he picks up.
Do you feel that he's kind of a higher skill cap version of Fear Guy?
I don't know if I'd say a higher skill cap version of Fear Guy, but he is definitely a spirit that is more fear-oriented than other spirits, which is kind of where his slow damage comes in, is he damages the invaders, generates fear for them being damaged, and then eventually kills them, which will generate even more fear.
Yeah.
So he's definitely a spirit focused on fear more than actual destruction, but he does have destruction in his back pocket. I think he's a good spirit, but I don't know if I can put him higher than like C tier if I'm being completely honest. This is another one that I can see, and if anyone wants to argue for B tier, I can see him being in B tier. But I just don't know if he's quite there. I think there's just a little bit too much. I think he's just a little bit too slow. He basically demands 3 card plays in addition to several of the elements that can be found on his track just to start triggering the higher level of his innates to truly be effective. Which means you're looking at turn 5, maybe 6 before he's really online. So he's a little bit slow to the punch.
True.
Which is kind of why I'm seeing him personally.
I feel like Shifting Memory should be below him.
You think?
I feel like for what Shroud can do, it is more impactful than what Shifting Memory does. But I don't know. I'm having trouble placing my finger on one.
Right. Well, is it
How does that feel to you?
is it because you want him to be above shifting memory in B tier, or do you want shifting memory below him in C tier? Is that where the conundrum is coming in?
It's more just I feel shifting memory needs to be below him somewhere. Either if they swap places, if Silent Mist was in B, or if they were both in C.
I'm happy to hear an argument for him being in B tier. I just personally I don't see it, which is why I'm looking for someone to give me the argument. I think he's a little too slow. I think it takes him just 1 to 2 turns longer than is generally allowed by the invaders to really kind of come into his own and do what he wants to do.
That is a good point, because I guess because he would struggle at higher difficulties where they're gonna be throwing stuff out faster than he can prepare. Versus shifting memory, who can just grab a major early and throw it out if need be.
So, like I said, do you want it to look like that?
No, maybe shifting memory doesn't to stay. I'll think more on it and come back to it.
That's fair.
Because now I'm second guessing myself.
Right. And I think we're down to our last spirit here from Jagged Earth. Yep. Grinning Trickster stirs up trouble.
Yes, my favorite Chaos boy.
Yep. Chaos Incarnate. Would you like to lead us?
I can sure try. So he can throw out quite a bit of tokens, somewhat similar to Lure, which is beneficial to everybody. Obviously, early on, they're only going to be on his board, but as he expands, he can start throwing them out elsewhere. He's surprisingly good, and I would say fairly consistent at handling his own board. He has some I would argue very good not innate powers, his unique powers, yeah. And some that are a bit lackluster or require a little bit more setup.
Tigers.
Yeah. Tigers is rarely ever going to see the light of day. But he has an odd level of flexibility given to him in that chaotic aspect of his let's see what happens, where he gets to just flip over the top card of the minor power deck, and as long as it's a land targeting card, just use it and get all of the effects. So unpredictable, very unpredictable. I've had many times where the let's see what happens target will do just nothing, and other times where it can turn games around. What else do you have to add to this? Because I love this man, but in my mind, very straightforward. And
yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot to add other than, while he does have plenty of tokens, they tend to focus on Strife. Yes. Which, as we discussed, is kind of the weaker token, though his ability to spam out 2, 3, 4 or more in a single turn definitely helps to compensate for their lackluster
and he's
value.
Got the, I think, or why don't you and them fight? Or
yeah.
No, that's the innate one. He has a unique power that allows one thing with strike on it to deal damage to all the rest. Yeah.
Yeah, so he definitely makes use of the Strife token in a way that is not necessarily strictly unique to him, at least not as of Nature Incarnate, but more so than most spirits where Strife is just they don't ravage for that turn. He actually capitalizes on that and gets more value out of a token that's generally a little bit weaker.
Yeah, his let's see what happens innate is very reliant as well. You can get it off turn 1 just with the cards that you have in hand. But it is a bit hard to say because so much is kind of geared towards that.
Yeah, and that's part of his whole thing. Is he's supposed to be a little bit more of a chaotic spirit with less control. That said, he does have, I don't want to say it's famous, but he does have a popular build that I've seen online referred to as the Reclaim Roller Coaster, which if utilized properly, wins your board basically hands down. And as a result of having a build that can more or less guarantee a win means that he's got to be at least up here in the A tier, probably in the higher echelons, because the ability to, from the early game on, just win a board is, again, what makes these A tier spirits generally their A tier.
I still think below.
You think here?
I think so.
I think there.
It's really hard to compare to that early board player.
This I know is another one of the fan favorite spirits, and I've heard talk from people who were part of the playtesting team that this guy went through several redesigns because he was too powerful when they first tried to make him. And some would argue that there's many who would argue that he's still too powerful to this day. Again, the fact that he has a very common and popular build online that basically just ensures you win your board every game speaks wonders to that. And there's an argument as a result of that build alone that he maybe should be higher on A tier. But I'm happy to leave him there for now.
Yeah, I myself have not tried out that little combo, but it'll be something that I have to try in the future.
Yeah. All right. Now for the next promo pack 2, we have, what do we got at the top there? We got Downpour.
You want Downpour?
Yeah, we put the Chimera.
Yeah.
Jakiro, as I've also called it. Again, more Dota references. Play Dota, you fucks. We need more people to play. Downpour, sometimes referred to as the copy-paste guy also. Not copy pasta, copy paste. All right, this is Control C, Control V. I love this spirit too. It's just so fun. It's one of the spirits where the minor powers are generally not particularly good. But I also would say that until you've played this character, a lot of people would still underestimate how powerful the minors can be, even though they're not necessarily super good. But you play this guy, and suddenly you're like, you know what? Yeah, playing a minor 3 times is super good, but the fact that I've been able to play that minor on 3 different lands, suddenly you start to realize just what value is inside of a minor as you start to... This guy gives you a lot of respect for some of the minor powers that you might have otherwise not have, overlooked, I should say. Really fun spirit, really good spirit. He, despite having a double proliferation ability, he can't frequently use it, especially not early on in the game, due to the downside of having to discard 2 cards to use it. Unless you have no cards, then you can discard no cards, but that also means you're not playing any cards, so I guess that means you're winning your board and you didn't have to play cards that turn, which is possible.
You should be.
Yeah, I've had certain spirits where they just don't play cards on a certain turn. I know, like the Fire Dude, for example, there's many a game where the Fire Dude just doesn't play a card on turn 1 because he's got nothing to target. He can't hit anything.
It's like I threw my presence down and it died. I don't know. What do I do from here?
Yeah. But yeah, if you find that the Chimera here is ever in a position where he doesn't have to play cards, then yeah, proliferate twice for discard 2 cards if you had 2 cards in hand, or if you don't, just but yeah, generally you're not able to capitalize on his quick proliferation. But oh god, does this guy do fork? So he's in such a cool combination of elements, and they Greater Than Games did such a great job designing this spirit in those, where he has a handful of powers and he's in elements that lets him push explorers around, or not explorers, but invaders, I should say, around. And then his innate card, where once they're all in the land, he decides he doesn't want them in anymore, can just copy paste, sink into the earth, and just every single thing that's not an explorer just dies within it. It's so fun. This guy is just such a blast. That said, I think he's an A. I personally think he's an A tier.
I think he is.
I think he does a lot of work. That said, I don't know if he's super high in the A tier. Personally,
does he have a downside?
Not really. I mean, you could.
He just can't actually proliferate with his proliferation. without paying a heavy price.
But he can, but he still has the ability to proliferate. He just can't do the rapid proliferation.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no like, there's nothing about him that's like, because you did this that you're being penalized for doing it type of a thing. So I definitely think he's an A tier for that reason. I just don't know where I'd put him. Just because I love the guy, this is the bias showing through. I want to put him above Volcano, but I just don't know if he's quite at the level above Volcano or if he's maybe below Lure. I think he's in this ballpark.
So
I just don't know.
Additional range.
I know. I know. I just don't know where he falls exactly. I think he's in here somewhere. I guess.
I feel like it's another spirit where it's almost power dependent on what you're drawing. I don't know. I don't know what his unique power cards
are. So his unique ones, he has a gift card where target spirit puts a destroyed presence back into play, and can copy one of their cards by paying its cost.
That's not bad at all.
He has the sink into the mud, where he just deals 1 damage to all structures that are in a wetland, and then he's got ice. He's got one that pushes an invader and then isolates the land. Pushes, I should say, explore. It's not an invader. It pushes an explorer and isolates target land. And then he has one that is range 0, just throws defend 3 down, and then I think it also stops the Dahan from participating in Ravage, though. But
so comparing to Lure, because obviously I don't own Downpour, so I have not actually been able to play him at all, and I have not played him here yet. Lure can consistently clear at least his inland part of the board by turn 2.
I think, like I said, I know he's in the lower echelons of A. This is fine. I think we'll just leave him here for now.
Okay.
He's definitely A tier. I don't know if I don't think he's super high. He's very good though.
Shall we get to our final?
Yeah.
Not final spirit, but
final of Jagged Earth. We are on to Finder of Paths Unseen, aka the Hummingbird. Sometimes just the bird for short.
Yes, the bird.
Bird is in fact the word. God damn, is this spirit not super fun to play? Another one of my preferred spirits. I love this guy. I love his track. The ability,
his track is really unique.
Just being able to have so much customization on your track as to where you want to go, what you need at the time, is so fantastic. He can move cities. He's the first spirit who can actively move actual cities. I know we talked about how Lure can functionally move cities. This guy can actually just take an entire city and uproot it, Chicago style. For those of you who don't know that joke, Chicago, when sewer systems were invented, Chicago was actually lifted building by building on jacks so they could install the sewer system underneath Chicago. So there's for those of you who don't understand that joke. Just explain that. So yeah, he can just uproot cities, move them across. It's fantastic. He's got so much control. Even the back of his board, for those of you who look, where it just got like the little tiny can do nothing. The control like through the
bar graph, you could see.
They just had some fun with that too because they knew what they were doing.
But
here's.
I was going to say that's not the reason he's going.
That's not the reason this guy is good. The reason this guy is good. Is because as great as moving cities is, the ability for him to once per spirit action combine any 2 lands he has presence in and treat them as adjacent kind of means he gets his gets up
I think
here.
Below
right there. Kind of means he gets up there. You have, unless you for those of you who haven't played Jagged Earth, or I should say, this isn't Jagged Earth. This is the promo pack that came with after Jagged Earth for those who are in the Kickstarter, and now I think they released it as a full expansion. Yeah, Feather and Flame. Yeah. They released a full expansion.
Yeah, Feather and Flame was the first one.
No, Feather and Flame was the promo pack combined, when they combined the two promo packs as an actual unique expansion pack.
Yeah.
But yeah. If you haven't played Feather and Flame, or if you didn't get him when he was part of the promo 2 variant things, the ability to just put your presence, he has the ability, mind you, one of his growth options, if you don't know him, can put his presence down literally anywhere on the entire island, regardless of what the conditions are. And then he can make any two of his lands adjacent to each other, allowing him to push and pull, or other spirits to push and pull things into or out of his different lands.
Out of curiosity, does that mean that if Ocean's on the board, he can put a presence into the ocean?
No, he can't put a presence into the ocean, unfortunately.
Okay.
But it does mean that he can put a presence on the coastland, and that can be treated as adjacent
to anything. That inland land is. How does that? Does it count as both an inland and coastal land then?
Yeah.
Or would it just count as coastal?
Well, the one he's in would be coastal.
But if you're tying together a coastal and an inland,
well, then it'd be inland still. But he can just take all that stuff conveniently from the inland land, put it in the coastal land, and suddenly Ocean's got a buffet.
Yeah. It's like, well, thank you.
But yeah, this guy. So, in addition to his ability to put down a presence anywhere on the island, in addition to his ability to link two lands regardless of distance as adjacent, he makes absolute massive use of one of the new mechanics from Jagged Earth, the isolation mechanic, which is stupidly powerful. I would argue only just under Wild's level of powerful, because it
doesn't restrict blight movement.
Well, it doesn't restrict blight movement, but I think it's just because unless the land has nothing in it, in future turns they can still come out of it. It means on the turn it's isolated, they can't come out of it, which is fantastic. But if you don't get rid of them between that time that you isolate it and the next turn that they have attempt to explore, they'll come out of it. But it also means that you can isolate a land that has nothing in it and they can't get into it, so it acts as a wild.
Yeah.
So again, I would say it's just barely under Wilds in terms of value, but it's still a super powerful and very, very valuable mechanic, and he has an ability that lets him isolate up to 3 lands.
For fairly cheap element-wise,
very cheap. But then, of course, he also has the ability to ignore range completely on his powers. And icing on the cake, several of his unique powers, let alone one of his innate powers, have 0 range. And so once again, I encourage you, just try using a 0 power at range. I don't give a fuck. I'm going to use it.
Just, is it the island? Yes.
It is, again, if you've not experienced what it means to ignore range or to gain range, so to speak, on powers, you got to try it on powers that have usually range 0s where you can medicate. Because again, the range 0 power, all powers are balanced by their range, but the range 0 powers are balanced exclusively around their range. And so when you're just like +1 range, let alone anywhere on the island, the shenanigans you can get up to, and again, because of his ability to move everything and anything, he's got so many things we've talked about. There's no way that this is not an S tier spirit.
Yeah, because you don't have to build him as a damage dealer because, well, the space he's in. Well, look, we're next to Volcano.
Yeah.
There's a damage dealer.
Oh, look, they're in the volcano.
Yeah.
Some people might go, what about his downside? Oh, where he loses 1 presence if his action is responsible for an invader or Dahan's death. Yeah, it's a bit of a downside. The only time I've ever seen that come into play, though, is when you slaughter, like, wholesale entire countrysides of invaders, which is a small price to pay
when you 1 presence.
Yeah, when you lose 1 presence for the cost of 3 cities, 5 towns, and a hand, I'll take that. It's hardly a downside. It's more like, I can't believe they're actually making me pay such a penance for this for this value. No, you feel like a rich man dropping a fucking penny on a homeless guy for that one. Like, really? That's all I have to pay to get all these things away? Like, sure, whatever.
Do we want to go to the Horizon Spirits before we touch Nature Incarnate?
That's fair. We can do Horizons next. I'm going to be doing probably a lot of the talking here because I'm the only one of two of us who have played.
I played all of them.
You played Horizons?
Yeah.
All right.
They're all free on the.
You played the
I might
digital
have
one?
bought them on the digital one. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not free, but yeah, they're on the digital.
I play it on like airplanes and stuff.
Gotcha. So you have played that. Okay. Well, if we just follow this little track we got here, the first one of those, Nature Incarnate, is the what the hell is it called? What's the owl?
It is Rising Heat of Stone and Sand.
Oh, we're skipping. Okay, I was gonna say. But that's fine. We can do Rising Heat first. We'll do the other lizard.
I don't know. I have them all pulled up here. So
yeah, that's fine. Okay. Rising Heat.
This is the ritual sites give minus one
HP.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. If only he had a better ability to capitalize on that. Well, who does damage? Like, yeah, he does. But the thing is, only 50% of a standard board side game, he's in terms of his proliferation, he has double proliferation, but it has to hit sands or mountains, which means he doesn't always have two presence in jungles or wetlands, which means he's not always going to benefit from his pretty awesome ability, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. Because minus one health can do a lot.
It can do wonders.
The more invaders you have in one land, the better the ability becomes.
But he, like I said, he does have some small ability, which is to say one unique power card that lets him move one of his presence. So you can theoretically use his growth 3 in conjunction with that card to get a sacred site onto a jungle or a wetlands. But if you need to get to a jungle or wetlands, chances are you need to get to 2. And he can only do that to one land.
I mean, his third growth option is not.
It's not bad. No, it's not bad. I'm just saying that the fact that he is not restricted, so to speak, but his sacred sites are difficult to move off of the sands and mountains. It's difficult for him to get multiple sacred sites. That's probably a better way to phrase it. It's difficult to get multiple sacred sites on jungles and wetlands because it takes him more time to do it, even if you use his power card that helps him with that.
Yeah.
And as a result, 50% of the time in any given game or over the course of your lifetime playing him, he's not going to get his benefit. Yep. In addition to that, his level 2 innate is the one you want to trigger, which requires 3 card plays.
Which is a ways down that track.
Yes. Unless you want to go deep into the energy track to compensate, but chances are you're better off going down the energy track.
Yeah.
Which means that because you need to get to either 3 card plays or that fire on the energy track, means you're going to be using the growth 2 option to get 2 presence out much more frequently than your growth 3. Again, hindering your ability to get sacred sites off of your mountains and sands.
Not to mention that could also mean that later on he might be fine with it, but I feel like there could be a possible risk of being stuck in a reclaim cycle.
He can. You can avoid it. There's definitely ways to avoid it, but he could get stuck in a poor reclaim cycle. Overall, after playing him, I played him against many different invaders, all the different invaders actually, and on many different difficulties. I've had a bad habit going into kind of building up for my preparation on this tier list of basically playing over the course of all these different games, all the different spirits against all the different invaders. We're just going level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and just kind of watching how they play out. And then, if they lose, play again. If they lose, play again. If they lose, all right, now we're moving on to the next one. That's where I'm like, okay, that's where I can suspect where they're starting to struggle. If they lose 4 or 5 games in a row, that's the level they start to struggle at. Not that they can't do it, and he started to struggle just a bit earlier than some of the other Horizon spirits, again, due to his limitations in terms of needing 3 card plays or that fire, and as a result being not restricted, but focusing heavily on his growth too. I think that puts him, sadly, in the DJ. I
feel like he's better than many minds.
Think?
I guess he lacks a second innate, but
I feel he just struggles a little bit on the higher difficulties because of how reliant he is on his second growth. and his limitations of being able to get into grasslands and wetlands, or forests and wetlands, whatever they're called. Green and blue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because Many Minds is still mobile, but again, most of it is just waiting and hoping for an event card.
Yeah.
Which
I don't know. I
can take a
definitely
more proactive approach.
That's fair.
But
I'm
being proactive still doesn't necessarily mean better, because Many Minds is still going to get a decent amount of fear.
Yeah. I personally think here I'm open to debate.
I'm kind of both ways. It feels odd to put a defend mechanic before a damage mechanic.
Right? Right.
It's throwing me off.
I definitely see where you're coming. I personally think he struggles just a little bit more than Many Minds. That's
because
my experience.
There's still one we haven't discussed from these Horizon Spirits who I feel is much worse than the rest of the Horizon Spirits.
Yeah. Well, next up on here is the that one. Yeah. I forget his name.
Eyes Watt from the Trees.
Yeah. So this is another defend spirit mechanic. Now, one thing I think we briefly touched on. I think it was before we recorded. But the New Horizon Spirits. Oh no, we did touch on this. Yeah. New Horizon Spirits, I think, did a better job with their low complexity spirits in terms of turning people on to how the different mechanics play out. The result in this case, this is going to be their defend spirit, which is supposed to be the kind of similar one to the whatever the hell this forgettable one is called.
I will say, outside of needing Moon and Fire, as we've talked about that being a hard to come by combo, much better than Easter Island guy.
Yeah. Unlike many minds, this guy is able to throw out defense. I think he throws out more defense. I think he goes up to 12, right?
Yeah, and he gets a decent amount of fear alongside that too.
Yeah, I mean, Many Minds gets a solid level of fear as well. He does require 4 card plays, or at least the grass before the 4 card play, plus the grass in his energy track, just to trigger his final level of the innate.
Yeah, which is probably what you would do.
Yeah, I think you
were to go for it, but
yeah,
honestly, the defend 6 and 3 fear is manageable.
Yeah. Again, these spirits are always really tough because these low complexity spirits, especially from New Horizons, above all else, were never designed with the intention of being played on the high level, because the New Horizons doesn't come, to my knowledge, with invaders. No. So you're only playing a base game level of Spirit Island. Yeah. And at which point these guys look really, really good. All the spirits look really good.
Yeah.
But
because it's been stripped down so
yeah, but when you bring in invaders, they all start to show their weaknesses very quickly. And I would say, despite his ability to trigger more defense than Many Minds, he struggles to reach that point more so than Many Minds does.
Yeah.
He does generate a hefty amount of fear, which is great.
But Many Minds still produces more fear, which, while they're both defend mechanics aren't going to win you that game. The fear might.
The fear might, but Many Minds has the bonus of something to the effect of like 35 to 40% of the event cards are going to have a beast event on them that it capitalizes on, that he does not. He is in the elements to get beast tokens. He'll see cards in his elements that will produce beasts, but he is not going to be able to just spit them out all over the island, Many Mind style, and then all of a sudden a beast event flips up that just, that solves that problem.
Yep.
So I think he does land himself in D tier.
Yes.
And I think I would put him below the Rising Heat. In this case, being more the fact that, again, I do favor the damage.
He can at least get it. Yes. But he also gets his benefits more consistently on all levels versus half.
That's true. I'm not opposed. Like I said, I'm open for debate. I'm always open for debate here, including in the comment section. Go ahead and yell at me.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't change it because this is a video.
In my experience playing them both, I felt an easier time with the trees than I did.
Okay. I'm fine with it, man.
Okay.
That's fine.
People can fight me.
Yeah.
It's probably not correct. There's something I'm missing. I obviously have not played them well enough to master them, but
All right. So the next New Horizons one showing up here is the Otter.
I also like the Otter.
Yeah, I like the Otter too. The Otter is probably one of the better ones of the New Horizon spirits. I don't think it's the best. We'll talk about the one I think is the best later. But I do like the Otter. I think the Otter is probably going to earn himself C tier. We'll talk a little bit about exactly where he lands.
Yeah, because that special rule is really useful.
Yeah, it's really good. He also all of the New Horizons except for one. Yeah, all the New Horizon spirits except for one fast proliferate quickly, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, he can sustain a 3-card play. To a lesser extent, he can even sustain 4-card play because he comes with a unique power card that gives him cards.
Yeah.
So he can. I don't know if you necessarily want to like bum rush down to 4 cards, but if you kind of split your fast growth between, like, say a 2-to-1 ratio of card play to energy rate, he can at that point very easily sustain 4 card plays while you finish out the energy track.
Yeah, I think if I was to play him, I wouldn't exactly bomb rush either. I would probably take middle growth option, take 1 from each, so you get the extra card play and the grass. Probably next turn get a couple extra energy. Turn 3 reclaim. I can take the earth, play 2, and then I could do the 3rd growth option, pick up what would be the 5th power card I would then have, unlock the 3 card plays, which I would then have 3 because I played 2 after reclaiming. And I think that would probably be the best way to go.
You should have 6 after reclaiming because you theoretically would have played your card that gives you a card.
That is true. In which case, if knowing that, then I would probably actually go with the proliferate again, take the 3 card play and the water.
Yep. Like I said, there's a lot to do. This is definitely one of the better of the New Horizon spirits, and like I said, unless you've got something against him, I don't see any reason he shouldn't be maybe even above Shadows. Maybe above Rivers.
Rivers got damage and movement.
He's got some damage too. It's not nearly the same level of damage though.
He has fear damage, and again, just turning towns and cities that would build into explorers is really good.
That's really nice because it prevents them from future exploring if they build a town there.
Yeah, he might be better than River.
Yeah. Do we? I don't know if he's better than Starlight though. Unfortunately, that's a tough one to say he's better than Starlight.
Moon, Water, and Mountain are his elements, which are all pretty easy to get together because that's also Ocean's elements.
Yeah. The grass is almost irrelevant.
Yeah. If you don't even pick up any grass, you should still be okay. Or you technically only need 1. He has 1 in his track. I don't know why they give it to you so early. Yeah.
But he has, I think, at least 1. I think 2 of his cards.
So yeah, then you don't even have to worry about the grass then.
I know it's 1.
He might be above Starlight.
Do we keep going?
Do we keep going?
I don't think I can. I
wasn't expecting this.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever put him above the Fear guy, but I do think. I mean, he does have a much stronger early game than the Snake.
He does, and he has enough damage to. And again, just denying the building of towns and cities means it's easy for him to pick up with what little damage he has. I think he's above Snake too.
I think that's fair. I don't think I can put him above the Fear guy though.
No,
I just don't think I can. Not without a very good argument.
Yeah.
Give me an argument in the comments.
I think there's a decent competition, but I still think Fear guy overall.
Yeah. Give me your arguments in the comments. I'm open to debate on any of these positions, but I don't think I can put him above there without a good argument.
Yeah. That's hard because I like everything the Otter does.
Yep. All right, now just going down this little list here. The next one is Sun Cat.
And this is the one that we kind of agree.
This is the one I think is the best.
The Horizon Spirit.
This is the one I think is the best. It has an insane level of control, not comparable to the bird, sadly, but an insane level of control nonetheless. And
many cheap push effects.
Yeah,
It
cheap push
only
effects.
needs two elements.
Yep, he has damage built into the innate, as well as a unique card that does damage as well. So he's got a lot of ability. His special rule where he can push explorers means that when they explore into a new land, he can tell them to get the fuck out before they build.
Yeah.
Which, in my opinion, is more valuable even than the Otter's ability to prevent the build.
Mm-hmm.
But not the Otter. The Otter doesn't prevent. Sorry, the Otter changes it from build to they just get an extra explorer.
I feel like changing it into explorers is better than. This now has me questioning it because
now you're putting an extra. This guy does stop them from building a town, which prevents them from exploring out of that land. But there's still 2 explorers, which means without defense, the land's taking blight. Whereas this guy pushes an explorer to a new land where they don't build.
It's also building, and if he's set up because he is in slow, so if he knows that they're going to be building an explorer, he can have the damage readily available
to hit a new explorer. I think it's the better
for the land where the explorer would be placed essentially, so they wouldn't ravage them next turn. But obviously, he can only do so once. So just moving them out is probably better.
I would say it's better than the Otter. Like you said, I'm pretty sure this is the best New Horizon Spirit.
Still not better than Fear Guy, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next.
Because Fear Guy still has so much push from his destruction abilities.
Yeah, again, it's kind of at this point it's control versus control.
And Fear Guy wins that hands down. Again,
he wins the control war, but this one actually comes with damage. Damage that actually goes through and removes the piece before they can explore again.
Yes, but the trade-off there is that Fear Guy gets the extra fear off.
That's fair.
Especially if you go with the aspect, which obviously we're not ranking right now, but that aspect does make him even better.
That's all right. I'm not, like I said, I'm just looking for what the argument is. I will agree to that, and we'll leave him there. Definitely better than the Auto though.
Because you're still going to be pushing them out. You can try and congest them into one area, and then if that one land ravages, oh well.
Next up is the final of the New Horizons Spirit. This is the black horse, or not the black sheep. No, the dark horse. That's what it's called. This is the dark horse of New Horizons for me.
Tremors.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, Tremors the dark. When I first saw this guy and his abilities, and I was looking over him, I was like, he's fine.
Yeah,
he's
devouring teeth lurk underfoot.
Yeah, I was like, he's fine. He does his job. Then I played him a few times, and I'm going, no, he's pretty fucking good.
Oh yeah,
he's pretty good. Again, like a lot of the New Horizon spirits, when it comes to the higher difficulties, they start to show their true colors and just how much they struggle. But this is another one that I think does make it into C tier.
Yep.
He is the slowest in terms of proliferation of all of the New Horizon spirits, though he does have the advantage of always putting out a presence regardless of which growth option you take.
I think he's better than Shadow, but worse than River. Thoughts on that?
I mean, for sure, I think he's better than Shadow. I'm not a big fan of Shadow. Is the thing. So this might be bias showing through right here, but yeah, +1 damage per power he uses that deals damage, and it affects his innate, and it also, I don't know if this is a bug in the digital version. So if this is a bug in the digital version, someone can tell me here. But in the digital version, for whatever reason, if you get the level 2 of his innate, it does 4 damage, not 3. It's as if it's counting his innate power or his special rule twice, 1 for the 1 damage and 1 for the follow-up 2 damage.
So, are you talking about when you get the 2 damage?
Yeah, it's giving you 4 in total.
Yeah, because it's not an instead ability.
But it's not a plus either. Because if you look at, say, where the hell's the lizard? Yeah, here's the lizard. See, he gets it's.
True, but I think there's a couple that haven't.
Like I said, I don't know if it's
he's got plus damage.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a bug in there or if that's how it's. If it was errated, it might have been errated at some point.
Maybe.
I don't know, but like I said, I see it there, and all of a sudden it's doing 4 damage.
Or maybe like just some type of mistypo or.
But yeah, like I said, it does 4 damage instead of 3, and I'm like, I'll take it. I ain't gonna complain.
Let me look at the other spirits that came in New Horizons to see if they do the same thing. Actually,
I do think though I want to put him above.
So that's interesting. So if we look at Rising Heat, his also doesn't have the plus, but he has this little stipulation down here. Innate powers perform all thresholds reached in order on the same target line.
Oh, right.
So
that's why. So that's why it does do that then. Why does
and his also specifies innate and target same land.
Does the one dude?
Not. Come on, teeth. There you go. This is the this is on the actual digital version versus I was looking at the cards. If I look, his does, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it does.
So it's not a bug. So it does work like that.
It just doesn't have that little stipulation on the digital version.
Gotcha. So that's why. Okay. Yeah, I think I put him above River Surges because he does do substantially more damage. Since every power card, not just his innate, literally everything that does damage.
He is a faster early than River.
He's not as fast, but I think the value is in the fact that you can get a card that says 1 damage. Well, no, it's destroy town now.
That's
fair. What's the one we've referred to as the minor power version of Fire and Flames? Sunset streaks over the horizon or whatever. Its elements are sun, fire, and water. And it's 1 fear, 1 damage, pay 1 energy, do 1 damage to an adjacent land.
Oh yeah.
Well, he just did 2 damage to 2 different lands. He just popped 2 fucking towns off of that card alone. So, like I said, I think that there's just so much more value in that +1 damage every time you do damage.
I can see that then. It's still a bit dependent on the powers that you draw, but
yeah. But the thing is,
that's like a really good case situation.
That one,
if you're like,
but even
that's destroy an explorer. And
but there's minor powers like what is it? Something like ready or rouse. That's what it is. Rouse the earth and trees, and it's 2 damage to any land without blight in it. Well, now it's 3 damage. You can just destroy a city outright.
How much energy is that? 1. I'm assuming
2.
to play 2. Okay.
And it's range 1. Like I said, the
Fire and Flood.
Yeah, he just like I said. Anytime he picks up a damage card, which there are plenty of them, and even the fact that even 1 damage suddenly a card that was theoretically designed to destroy an explorer or maybe finish off a town or a city based on an event card.
Flat out.
Now it kills a town or kills a city. Like it's so powerful. It's such a just outstanding ability.
Okay,
and
I can see that.
Like I said, I that's why I thought he was the dark horse. So I looked at that and went like 1 extra damage. Like that's good. I'm not going to knock 1 extra damage. But then I started doing. I'm like, oh my god, 1 extra damage is that's such a huge difference.
Oh yeah.
But his slow proliferation definitely means that he's going to struggle because he won't be able to reach the thresholds of his innate power until it's later in the game, which is why I just can't see him above C tier because he's going to struggle way before he gets to the point where he's going to be good.
That's fair. Let's see, because both of us kind of have opposite taste in the new nature incarnate spirits.
Well, first of all, let's just talk briefly about the incarnas. I know that we're trying to do this tier list on the spirits specifically, but as much as I love Spirit Island, as much as I even love Nature Incarnate and a lot that it brought, the incarnas feel like such a gimmick.
Yes.
They feel like the developers wanted something unique to this that they hadn't done, and they needed a new mechanic they wanted to introduce, but they didn't know how to. They couldn't either agree on
ideas for what the mechanic.
Yeah, they couldn't agree on it. They couldn't figure it out, so they went with this Incarna thing, and it feels good for the spirits who have them, but it just feels bad for the game as a whole.
I don't even think it feels good for the spirits that have them. It's almost like just having a ritual site that's not a ritual site or sacred site. Sorry. Like with maybe a few exceptions, because obviously some of them have like there's a beast on there. But you could also just say you start with a beast on that board or whatnot. Because they're still affected by things.
Yeah. And the value is just how mobile not all, but a lot of the different Incarnas are.
Yeah.
The thing is, I do agree. Like, it could just have an innate, like a special rule or an innate power that would allow that mobility.
Like move 2 presents from one land.
Yeah, take a beast with you, type of thing. Like, there's a lot. I 100% agree. I see exactly your point. I don't want to belittle it because, like, I agree. I don't think it's good for the game state.
Yeah.
I don't think it hurts the game state. I just don't think it's a good direction to take the game state in.
Yeah, it doesn't negatively impact it in any way.
It's just the what positives it does. It doesn't really.
It's just that.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like it's providing any positive or negative. It's just it doesn't feel like isolation. Like when that got introduced in Jagger, I'm like, holy shit, this is such a fucking good mechanic. Or the different tokens that came out in Branch and Claw,
and disease and beast.
Oh my god! What fucking great mechanics. And then this one, I'm going like, This just feels like they were reaching.
Yeah, like imagine if Ember Eye was just move a ritual site, the ways that you would move the Incarna, and then you just do damage at a ritual site instead of adding Incarna. Sure, it gives you a little bit more openness because you can have multiple ritual sites versus your one Incarna, or maybe Breath of Darkness might have needed an Incarna. His is a little awkward, but
he could have just had a unique token. I mean, you could have called it an Incarna.
I don't think Towering Roots needed one. She could have just had the Vitality as her whole thing.
Yeah.
I quite like Delirium. But he probably didn't need his either.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about all the mechanics at some point.
Yeah,
that'll
be another thing to add to the things that we'll tier list.
Yeah, the mechanics.
How much can we break this game?
G tier, gimmick tier.
Yeah.
All right. So I just want to briefly touch on the Incarnas before we get into this. All right. So
most of my favorite ones from it don't have Incarna.
Right. And even the aspects that they added to other spirits that came with the Incarnas generally don't feel good.
No, they don't. Lures hurts.
Yeah. And the snake has to give up too much for too little gain.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to start from your pile or my pile?
I was just going to start right here. So the first one they got on the list that we're working on is Ember-Eyed Behemoth. Or Behemoth, I should say. I think I've heard. I don't know why. I heard someone pronounce it Behemoth. I love Behemoth.
Is it Torterra?
You could call it Torterra too. But yeah, I heard someone once call pronounce the word Behemoth as Behemoth. Like, that's so fucking cool. I'm trying to convert to saying Behemoth. It sounds so cool. So definitely a high damage, high value spirit. Interestingly enough, comes with only one innate, which is typically a hindrance, especially to a lot of what we were talking about.
We only really see that on the intro spirits.
Yeah.
The 4 intros and then the horizon.
However, he gets to trigger his twice, and that's the part of the gimmick that he's got going, is that he has one innate, but it's functionally 2 innates, just, the same innate twice. Because you can target a different land. You use it again. It's not forced to hit the same. See, again, basically, you just read this innate power and then assume there's another one printed over here that just says when your Incarnate is empowered.
You have Smash, Stomp, and Flatten, and next to it, Smash, Stomp, and Flatten.
Yeah, Smash, Stomp, and Flatten empowered version. Only works. So he's got one innate that's functionally 2. It's kind of unfortunate because it means that he doesn't have like a utility innate to back up his damage innate. Say like Treebeard, for example, who comes with a damage innate and a utility innate. This guy is just raw damage. He does get to double proliferate, which is always valuable. It's strictly limited to jungles or a land in which he has presence. So similar to kind of what we were talking about with the Rising Heat guy.
Very restricted.
It's the value is that his Incarna, once it's been flipped, goes from being counting as a presence to counting as a sacred site, and that is extremely mobile so it helps to alleviate the problem of him.
Because you get to move it every fast and slow, or fast
once,
or slow?
Once per turn in the fast or the slow.
Okay.
But it has some mobility to it. He's got a really, really powerful set of unique cards. I think it's pretty fair to put him in A tier, personally.
Yeah, he has been very consistent when you've played him.
Yeah, I think I gotta give him above Volcano. I think his
Volcano can hit an area at once versus he's a bit focused with his damage.
True. Yeah, it's tough,
and the increased range on Volcano.
Yeah, it's like I think he belongs in this ballpark. It's tough to say where exactly he belongs.
Yeah,
he has probably higher damage output, at least in in a focused location.
But that's
than what Volcano
like
can do.
The Thunder Speaker.
Yeah, that's
well, I did this much damage in one land. But
that is one thing we didn't really touch on is when it comes to damage. While we appreciate damage, we appreciate our damage generally in multiple lands because as great as it is when you do get the two spirits who just have that perfect synergy, and the bird takes all the fucking problems you got and drops them in one land, and you drop 80 some damage on that land and wreck everything. As great as that is, you're not going to always be in a situation where you can pull all the invaders to one land. And very frequently, it's going to be more beneficial to spread the damage over multiple lands, because that'll do more damage to the invaders, kill more invaders, and more secure the land more efficiently. And while Behemoth can choose a land and absolutely wreck it, like everything that's made of plastic that is white plastic is going to be gone. While he has some mobility in his Incarna, it's not very mobile. And so, his ability to spread that damage means he's probably going to hit one land that's ravaging or about to, or building, or just after they build. And then one land that just has some explorers, or not explorers, but it has some invaders that you're just trying to get rid of for the sake of generating.
Maybe they just explore
there, type of a thing. Versus, again, Volcano, yeah, you're right. Volcano does have the fuck it button, where he can just blow up and everything in a giant AoE just takes a respectable 4 damage, which is not minor by any means. That's a respectable amount, 4 damage.
If he's been able to manage his board, which he generally can, then that is generally enough to clear whatever is starting to build up.
Yeah. I will say, that's fair. The spread damage Volcano offers probably does put him just above.
He can still
the Behemoth
focus his damage, can he not? If he needs to.
His options to focus are, he has the Minor Eruption for 2 damage at range 1, 4 damage and 4 fear at range 1, and then it's 4 damage in the AoE at range 1 from his location. So burst 1 from his location. And then his other one is 8 damage at a burst 2.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would see that. It's also, at the very least, he comes online faster than Behemoth does too.
That is true.
Behemoth needs. I'm sure some people would argue against this, but I typically, when I've played him, it's turn 3 when I get his Incarna empowered. It's basically 2 turns of playing cards and purposely trying to get as much fire into the discard as you can, so that on turn 3 you can reclaim all the fire cards and then keep playing with your newly empowered Incarna, which is by no means like super slow. I mean, hell, we talked about Treebeard takes 3 turns to hit his stride.
Yeah.
But when we're comparing him directly to Volcano is from turn 1 ready to fucking roll. Yes. He can't explode turn 1.
Not to mention that Behemoth still has to get his Incarnate into position, and while he is good at moving it, it still does not move very quickly.
Yeah. I think this is fair then. I think it's fair. He does do a considerable amount of damage, though, in target location.
Yes. Hearth Vigil?
Hearth Vigil.
I know you don't like my Dahan, but I am a man of the people.
I don't like...
And by that I mean dog.
Yeah, I do not particularly enjoy... I appreciate how the game utilizes Dahan, and when the opportunity would present itself, I will take it. But I typically do not enjoy playing spirits who utilize the Dahan, because I would rather just be like, oh, I have a card that says defend 4. Fuck it, one of those Dahan will live and kill the town, right? Like that's value. I very much have a personality in this game equal to Treebeards, which are the Dahan have a value, but if they're in the way when I attack, that's their fault, not mine.
Shouldn't have been there. But Hearth Vigil, we have established, is never going to be a good spirit, and that is for the fact that he will never get ahead of the invaders. He is completely reliant on the Dahan.
I don't know if you've specified what that means. I think we've said that. I think we've said that term. I think we've used that term several times, but we never talked about what that means. Okay, hold on.
I'll let you explain.
Yeah. Okay. So what we use is our own little short term. You're either ahead of the invaders, you're on par with the invaders, or you're behind the invaders. Basically, it seems self-explanatory. I'm sure some of you get it just by what we're talking about, but just in case, playing behind the invaders means that they are ravaging in lands that you are unable to stop the ravage. They are building in lands where you are unable to stop them from building. And they're exploring, and you don't have answers to stop them from exploring. That's when you're playing behind the invaders. That generally means you're going to lose the game. If not within a few turns, then eventually.
Then they're setting up for when they do later on.
Yeah. Playing ahead of the invaders is why we rate a lot of these spirits so highly. Spirits who get rated highly are typically spirits who, within the first handful of turns, usually 2, 3 or so, will destroy the invaders that have just built, preventing the ravage. They are destroying the invaders that are exploring, preventing builds and future ravages. And they're playing ahead of the invaders in the sense that their fast phase is basically used to cripple the build, and their slow phase is used to cripple their explore phase, meaning the invaders can't really do anything because they explore and then are either removed from the board or pushed to a land where they can't really do anything. And so playing with the invaders, this is something I think the first time we talked about this was with Tiny. Playing with the invaders just means that you are preventing ravages and or builds, depends a little bit on the spirit, but you're never going to get to a point, at least not without strictly rebuilding your power cards, of a point where when they explore, you prevent them from building.
It's essentially the invaders are still getting all of their activations, and at the end of all of those activations, we're just picking them up.
Yeah, you are countering their activations.
Yeah.
Counterplay.
So that's why Hearth Vigil is in the center, is because his Dahan, he can make fight at the same time as the Ravages, so they're still getting to explore, they're still getting to build, they're still getting to ravage and possibly blight the land, depending on a couple of stipulations. But his Dahan are also going to be counterpunching and then clearing out that space at the same time, so the land is being damaged at the same time that you're destroying all of the white pieces. So nobody is really pulling ahead, it's just kind of a stalemate. I would dare say that technically means the invaders get a little bit of a lead, since that means they have places to explore out of in previous activations.
Yeah.
But
no, I mean, basically because he relies on the Ravage to do his damage, it means that it's difficult unless you're able to get a handful of cards that have isolation or otherwise stop builds. It means that you're going to be focusing your powers on stopping them from, or not stopping, but on solidifying a win during the Ravage, which means the invaders are going to build, and because you don't have an answer to that build before, which is say in the previous turn slow phase or the fast phase of this turn, they now get to explore out of that building they just put up.
Yes. He is quite good if your intent is to keep the Dahan alive. He gives each one in his lands an additional 4 health each, as well as immunity to event and blight card actions that damage, destroy, or replace the Dahan, which against some adversaries as well can be quite handy. Blight also, when added into lands with Dahan and his presence, don't destroy his presence, so he gets a little bit of survivability there. It's sort of his way to deal with that having to counterpunch the invaders. Is he's not going to actually lose anything. He's just going to have to accept that there is now a blight on the island. Very good at positioning Dahan. I think another one of his biggest weaknesses is he struggles to interact with multiple lands at a time, so setting up 2 lands to counterpunch until you get his best version of his Warn of Impending Conflict, which just lets all of your Dahan and all of your lands fight before the invaders.
He's also slow to proliferate, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, he takes a while to build up. I at least generally find myself leaning more minor spam, even though his card plays don't exactly allow the most efficient form of that. But generally, it doesn't feel like he has a lot of energy until late game. He has some fairly expensive, unique power cards.
Yeah. I personally can see that there is an argument for him to be somewhere in the lower echelons of B tier, but I personally think he belongs in C tier.
Yes.
Up at the top?
Yep.
Is where I'm thinking.
Yeah. Because being able to deal damage with Dahan before invaders, generally most of the time you won't be able to fully clear the land, but you'll be able to get enough at later stages of the game.
Yeah. Next up on our list here, it looks like we got Wounded Waters.
That's back to you.
I was really impressed by Wounded Waters. Mostly because it felt like this was, I don't know how to best to say it, but let's just say like kind of an answer to Starlight. In that Starlight, as we talked about, kind of its biggest weakness is the fact that its versatility can come back to bite it in the ass. Whereas Wounded Waters has a similar kind of, it has 2 different paths it can kind of build on. So like Starlight, it has some level of versatility, some level of customization, but due to the fact that it has 2 set paths, it's much easier to know from the beginning what you're trying to do with this spirit. You're not as reliant on your card draws to facilitate whether the spirit's going to be successful or not. So in that regard, I see it as a better version of Starlight.
Yes.
I don't know if I can say this spirit is super good. Its early game is really wonky. What with it destroying its own presence every turn for the first 5 turns. Granted, it has the ability later in the game to put that presence back on by default, which is fantastic. But yeah, it's an interesting spirit trying to balance the fact that you are going to be losing presence while putting out presence. So your total presence on the board in the first 5 turns won't really change. But your reach and what powers you can use will, based on whether you destroy a sacred site or where you're present. So there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of interesting nuances to be found, I think, within Wounded Waters. I enjoy kind of the play style. I favor personally the water build, but it very much depends to me on the invaders which build you want to go, as well as what other spirits are in the game can also help to determine what you need to do, as the water build tends to be a little bit more support heavy. Not that it isn't aggressive in its own right, but yeah, I just... and it's also as a result of the fact that it takes 5 turns to kind of come online. It means the spirit's pretty slow, and the only way to put out 2 presents, quote unquote, per turn is after you get your 5th healing marker, and even then, it's not technically 2; it's 1 from your track and 1 of your destroyed ones. So it's not even technically fast proliferation even then. I really find this spirit hard to rate. From my experience with it, I feel like it's somewhere in the upper to mid C tier. But I can say that under the right circumstances, the because of the different builds and just how they interact with different invaders and different spirits, it's easy to see him in A tier under circumstances, or even in D tier in the wrong circumstances, which I think is why I feel so confident putting him somewhere in the C tiers, because it kind of averages out based on where.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it's somewhere between there and behind the otter. I think it's better than the snake, but worse than fear guy.
Yeah,
But where in there? I don't know whose abilities are better and who's going to be.
I think I'm going to put it there. I don't know if this is necessarily fair, but if we allow the fact that this spirit was built for the full Spirit Island versus the other two being built for a I hate to call it watered down, but what a watered down Spirit Island. I feel like that alone means that even if he is technically worse than them, he still does better because he was designed to play in a higher skill.
Yes. Does Windcat have 1 or 2 elites? I know Mud Water. Okay. So then, yeah, I do think it would be above.
Next up, hey, it's the sun.
It's the sun. So still you. Sun is fun.
The sun is so fun. The sun's fun. So, brief little story time here again, because we're just going to keep going on tangents for as long as I feel like it. There's many people who are deep into the Spirit Island message boards and so on, disregarding Reddit, because fuck Reddit. You've probably seen a lot of people talking about how they got the Dahan chick with the manifest power to do ludicrous amounts of damage. I've seen people talking about literally doing something to the effect of like 87 damage in a single land. And you know what? If you found a way to get that many invaders in there where you needed that kind of damage, all the power to you. But so very rarely are you ever going to see a situation where you need to do 87 damage in a single land, let alone, anything more than, say, 15. 15 is an insane amount of damage in this game. And so very rarely are you going to see a land so built up outside of, again, maybe with the bird moving stuff around, where you're going to, you need that kind of damage. And to me, the sun is greater than game's answer. Like, hey, people like doing insane amounts of damage in a single land. What if we make a spirit whose sole purpose is to choose one land and nothing exists in that land?
You ever wanted to make the biggest laser beam you ever could and aim it at one land?
Oh my god, the sun is so fun because like I said, it encapsulizes that whole. I got the Dahache to do 100 damage in a single. Like, why would you ever need that? Like, did you somehow move every invader from the entire island into a single land? How did you do that without losing the game in the process? And the sun just capitalizes on that, like that
sun's
that
whole
mirth.
Here.
Yeah, all that. The sun's just like, yep, let's do it. Has all that mirth. Choose a land. That land doesn't exist. I mean, it does exist, I guess, the land itself, but nothing exists in the land.
Did so much damage that the invaders chose to isolate it themselves.
Oh, man. It is so fun. Unfortunately, because of the way the sun does interact, where it kind of has to choose one land at a time.
Yeah.
Maybe
going back
two.
To our focus damage conversation.
Yeah, maybe two. It can maybe split that damage a little bit between two lands due to its innate power that lets it jump to a different land. So it can kind of focus that damage between two lands, but let's be honest here. Even early in the game, there's 4 lands you're trying to contend with. The ones that are ravaging, actually it's technically 6, but 4 usually. Usually it's the lands that are ravaging, the lands that are building. At least until you
the problem.
Yeah, at least until you kind of catch up or pass up the invaders, and then there's only like 2 problem lands. But typically there's about 4 lands you're trying to deal with in a turn, and the sun can reliably deal with 2, and even that is reliable. It's meaning that it can do it, but
there's a bit of luck involved. Yeah.
So the sun can very quickly go from winning its board to losing its board strictly by the invader deck alone.
Yeah.
Not so much the invader. Like if they double, like let's say on they go from
France.
well, not so much France. I'm saying like what if they double up? Like if you go from turn 3 they flip mountain, turn 4 they flip mountain. The Sun won the game. Just like that, you've won the game because suddenly that is like gives the Sun its ability to like take a breather, take a step back, and go, okay, I can sort this out.
But if you find yourself subject to something like Scotland's,
but as soon as that escalation shows up and it's not in a land that you already have control over, the Sun's lost it, and getting that control back is very difficult for it. It can do it.
Yeah.
You can get the right cards. You can play the right. You can play just strategically. You can do it, but it's an uphill battle. The Sun
has one laser pointer, and there is roughly 8 lands per board. Yeah.
So it's fun. The Sun is so much fun to play.
Yeah.
But
to make things disappear.
Yeah, but one wrong move and you lose control of your board. Or even like I said, just one wrong invader card, it flips just wrong at the wrong time. You get an escalation that you weren't ready, and suddenly the whole thing just goes to shit.
So if you want to be good with the Sun, you must learn self-control.
Yeah. There's a part of me that really wants to put him in D tier just because he is so dependent on getting a nice invader deck, or maybe even the right card. There's a little bit of dependency, but at the same time, it's hard to not put him in C tier.
We already have so much in C. Let's put him in top of D, and after we finish, because we've almost gotten all these spirits, we can kind of readjust and converse.
That's fair.
Who we got next?
The shadow dude, the tree,
Breath of Darkness.
Yeah, Breath of Darkness. I love this spirit.
I fucking hate the spirit. It is my least favorite out of all the nature incarnate. I thought I was going to love it.
I love this spirit, and I just recently realized how wrong I've been playing him, and it's great because it means that he's so much better than I thought. I read his innate rule initially, the
Realm of Darkness or whatever.
No, where is it? When your powers would directly damage or directly destroy the only invader in a land instead of abduct it. I misunderstood the directly damage part. You can abduct an entire city off the face of the earth by doing 1 damage to it if it's the only thing. For like 3 or 4 games, I was not playing that correctly. He can just take any fucking... He can just take anything off the board, throw it into his realm of darkness, and start downgrading it. Suddenly, that city, that city that starts on the board every single game, he can just turn walk in, take it the fuck out, and just start downgrading it, so that by the time it comes back out of his realm of darkness, it's just a little wimpy explorer.
I didn't even realize that.
Oh my god! Like I said, I misread that. I didn't understand it until then. I read it again, and I'm like, I've been playing him so wrong. I thought he was good before. Now I know he's fucking good. This guy's a monster.
I'm gonna have to play him again now.
Just absolutely disgustingly powerful. I think we kind of briefly mentioned he's probably one of the guys who makes the most use out of the Incarnate, and it doesn't feel like such a gimmick to him.
Yeah. Yeah, for him it makes the most sense to have.
Oh man, I love this guy. I will say though that I don't know if I can slap him in A tier as powerful as he is.
I am
only because
B tier.
I know that's where I'm putting him. I think he's got to go B tier, and I say that only because I think I want to put him right here. Honestly, I think the ability to just abduct cities
below
is just too good in my opinion.
Fair. I want to say below Vengeance, but.
Yeah,
I think good point.
But I think the reason I have to keep him in B tier is because there is a downside in that he can't really well, he can technically. He can downgrade explorers into nothingness, but the time it takes for him to downgrade
a city,
town, even let alone a city, into an explorer and then get removed is usually a lot longer than between his reclaim cycles. which means chances are, if he does abduct a city, when it comes out, it's not going to be the threat it used to be, but it's still going to be something that's coming out of his realm of darkness because it's just too strong early in the game for him to downgrade it before he gets to his reclaim and has to start. All of a sudden, some of these things he's abducted, he's starting to spit back out. And that is something that's manageable in the sense that you have control of where those things come out at. But it's still a downside that the rest of the island spirits have to fucking deal with because you have no control. When you reclaim, it's all coming out.
Yep. Which is a nice balancing factor.
Yeah.
It's one that he needs.
Yeah. If he didn't have that, he would probably be top of A tier if he didn't have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really good spirit. Love this. I love this guy. So fun.
Yeah, being able to
so
just
disgusting.
do A damage to something that's all alone and take it is insane.
And you can grab a power card that just says do 1 damage, and that's mine.
Hey,
look. Yeah, so good.
He
also the other thing I just thought of. This kind of keeps him in B tier. It's not as restrictive as the fact that he spits out everything he swallows up, but also he is extremely elemental dependent. His first couple of cards that he draws, if they do not have elements he needs, it is going to hurt him substantially. Actually, thinking about that, I think I do got to put him even down here, actually.
Really?
I think he is... I think we've even talked about this before. Like, he draws 1 or 2 cards before he kind of just starts spamming energy gain. And if he doesn't have a card that gets him to his level 3 innate on the move the Incarna one around, he kind of just loses all his gas.
If he's also struggling with elements, then probably below the guy who can just create elements.
Well, not so much that. I think he's still probably more powerful than this guy.
Okay.
Yeah, his problem is elements, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's worse.
Even for the fact that with a major, he could just wipe a city off the face of it? Do know, this is my bias speaking. I will make that very clear.
That's true. But he can always just abduct the city.
True. But imagine if the city never returned.
That's true. But I think his mobility and the ability to just grab city here, town there, dude there.
Yeah.
His ability, he can hit up to 4 lands in 1 turn with his Incarna. Now, granted, that's later. That's kind of in the mid game, not so much the early game, but
still being able to just pick up 4, say, cities.
If you're picking up 4 independent cities, something really gone wrong on your board. I don't know how you got 3.
It doesn't have to be just your board. Maybe you've expanded to other boards.
I don't know how you got into a situation where you got to move your Incarna 4 times in 4 cities, and they're the only thing in that land. But you know what? If you somehow manage that fucking board state, then yes, he's going to swallow those up, no problem.
And then my favorite from Major Incarnate.
I like the Earthquake too.
And
Dances with Earthquake.
Probably the best designed out of Major
very,
Incarnate.
very fun design. This is honestly, when you we were talking about how the Incarnates are kind of gimmicks, and then you look at this spirit and you're going like, but this one
unique.
But this is what people were looking for.
Yeah.
And this is what we wanted more of. Like, what a fun and interesting way to play a spirit.
Yes, and he's good.
He's super good.
I would put him above Shifting Memory. Dances up Earthquakes. Whole sort of theme is he's gonna take. Generally, you're gonna want a couple of major powers and then a bunch of minors, and you're gonna impend them, and they're gonna sit there, and over time they're gonna build up on energy. Once they hit enough energy built up to meet their cost, they just enter play. They don't count towards your number of card plays except for when you do impend them. So you do that instead of playing your cards. And it makes for a really interesting sort of situation because you're going to have a couple of turns where you're just impending. Maybe you'll actually play 1 card. But for the most part, he might have 1 or 2 turns of doing nothing, and then he'll have 1 turn where he does everything. He'll generally have spit out a couple of Quake tokens. He gets to do damage there as well as just stacking all of those majors and minors all at once and having that explosive turn. It makes it slightly easier for him to hit elemental requirements. Yeah, what else do you want to add to that? Because pretty solid. It's just the issue of there's 2 turns where you don't really do anything.
I think that is his only issue, is the fact that he has to take 2, 3, depending on the situation, turns kind of off, where he is only playing 1 card, sometimes 0 cards, and he has very, very little impact on the board. And then he has one insane turn that basically takes all that control he lost back, and then some.
Yep.
And then he goes back to.
Well, I've had it before where it's like his whole board will essentially be the problem board, and then he finally hits that one good turn, and everything's gone.
Oh yeah, it's kind of like a mini snake in that regard. Only whereas the snake can kind of stop the entire 4-person board, this guy just stops his own board.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can put him too high. I want to put him in A tier, but I don't know if I can put him too hard.
I don't think he's an A tier because of how long he has to wait.
You think the weight is enough to put him in B tier? I think the weight might qualify, but at the same time, the fact that once he goes off, he kind of just wins his board.
Either above or below Wildfire.
Well, I think Wildfire owns B tier, if I'm being completely honest.
Fair. So then,
because Wildfire can do Wildfire can do the amount of damage this guy can do over the same amount of turns, but he's actually getting value of it on the turns where this guy's taking it off.
Yeah. Well, I would argue differently. Because if Wildfire wipes everything, they're generally not going to be building cities. If you're taking a couple turns off, you might have a couple of cities. That's more fear than you would be getting if Wildfire is just slowly hitting versus one big turn of wipe a bunch of cities.
Right, but again, you're giving up control over your board, where Wildfire maintains control over his board.
True.
I think Wildfire just kind of owns B tier.
I'm okay with that.
I think there's definitely an argument to say that there are spirits who can compete with him, like Earthquake here. But I just don't think there's anyone who can truly, if they're beating Wildfire, I think they at that point just deserve A tier. Is my point. I think he is the gatekeeper to A tier simply because he has everything that an A tier spirit wants, but he comes at that one downside of he's going to blight the island, and you have to work around that.
Yeah.
So if you're better than his damage output, which again, he basically from turn 2 onwards has won his board.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been recently spamming out France. This is my most recent spam fest I've been doing. And I've been spamming out France. I just moved on to level 6 the other day. I finally won a level 5 game. It only took me like 3 tries, so I didn't feel too bad. I don't know when or if I'll beat the level 6 here, because level 6 is pretty nasty. But every game at level 5 and the games I played at level 6, by turn 3, the invaders are on the coast, and they at best have one land with a town and or a city. And he's just eyeing that up for the next turn. Actually, that's what I'm taking out.
Yeah. I think at higher difficulties, dances struggle a lot because he has to take that time, and that means the invaders are going nuts on his board.
Especially once you hit escalation stages, which
generally when he's starting to
they will escalate. Yeah, from my playing anyways, it's usually they'll get to their first level 2 card, they'll explore, they'll hit that escalation, and then he earthquakes in that slow phase.
Yeah.
And then he's taking 2 or 3 turns off while they're continuing to escalate.
Yep. Which
really hurts.
Kind of saving grace. It's not really a super solid one, but he at least has a card to skip all the rapid actions.
Yeah, that's true. He does have that one.
But that's still only 1 land out of 2.
Yeah.
And
eventually,
unless you're reclaiming it every time once, maybe twice before you're actually going.
Yeah, that's fair. Like I said, I can see an argument for him to be an A tier, but if he's going to be in B tier, we have to compare him to the fact that
I think he needs to be in B tier. He has too many downs.
That's fair. I'm not going to argue. I'm just saying that if something goes in B tier, it has to be insanely good to beat out the fire dude. Because like I said, France, I played him versus England. I've never seen this guy not just completely dominate his board by turn 3 and just have complete and total control over it. Again, the problem is that he blighted 4 lands to do it, but a
But
small
there's
price
no
to
more white pieces.
a small price to pay for the fact that he's now eyeing up other people's boards. Like, hey, who needs help now?
Yeah. Delirium.
Delirium.
Another one that I quite like. Doesn't really need the Incarna. Could have just done with moving presence to add strife, but oh well.
Delirium's been growing on me. I don't think it'll ever be one of my preferred or favorite spirits, but I definitely, after playing it a few times, it's gone up from like, I don't know if I really like this spirit to it's pretty good.
Yeah, because you look at the strife mechanic, and we've talked about strife is of those tokens that interact with the invader phase the worst.
Yeah.
Besides the one we haven't talked about
yet. Foreshadowing.
But the ability to just destroy an invader with strife, per pairing of sun and moon, which is
very powerful.
The only thing you really need outside of wind. Really good.
Very powerful.
Really good. And the ability to just condense all of the invaders into 1-2 lands. And as well as having a unique power to, if all of those would ravage while they've got strife on them, they just don't. So that they get to keep their strife is also really good.
Yep.
So a lot of control over the board. Not the most damage heavy, but doesn't really need it because, again, just destroy effect.
Yep.
Plenty of mobility on the Incarna, which is necessary because that's how you get the majority of its strife. It does struggle the most against invaders that can put out more pieces than it can rally together. And that is probably its biggest struggle because it can pick up cities by turn 3-ish, 2 or 3. Because if you do top and bottom, and then from there you do. No, probably not. It would probably need a little bit longer depending on elements and whatnot. Either 3-card plays or this wind, and you have to do this on that same, the third growth option on that same turn in order to get the just destroy invader effect. But still, I feel a lot of flexibility. With its mind-shattering song, you can either go more fear generation, or if you want a little bit more damage. Empowering the Incarna is not really necessary. It doesn't feel like you have to work towards it, but if it happens, it's nice. Because really, it just then isolates whatever land your Incarna is in. Which actually, I feel like, would that not be a hindrance if you're wanting to push things out of the land?
You have control of what goes in or out.
Okay.
The board does not.
So you're essentially just trying to push everything into that land and then move it in there to isolate it and keep it there. Okay. I do personally really like it. I think it is a good spirit. It is not able to contend very well, not well enough for A tier, I think.
You don't think so? I don't think it's necessarily so bad. I think it might be in the lower echelon tier. I know I'm not the biggest fan of the guy, but it does have a lot of destruction capabilities. It does have fast proliferation, which is very valuable.
Yep. That third growth option has a lot of benefit to it. And the reclaim option letting you just jump your Incarna somewhere.
I think it does a lot of damage. I think it's at least comparable to, say, Behemoth.
I would put it below Lure. I feel like Lure has better ability to maneuver and kill stuff than it does. Since this requires the stipulation of strife.
What were you thinking, though, before I was thinking A tier?
I
don't see anything detrimental to it that would put it into B tier. It doesn't come with some sort of a downside that cripples the board or the spirit.
Yeah, it again mostly is just how well can it keep up with the speed the invaders are producing it. Because if it can get all of the inland lands handled really quickly, then yes, it'll be fine. But if it's something like France, where every time they're exploring, they're getting additional explorers, those are turning into towns, or just something that spreads across the entire board. He wants to kind of bounce between only a couple lands to manage them, not the whole board.
Right.
He plays like Lure, where he wants to condense everything down.
Yeah.
I
still don't know if I could. I still think he's good enough to be A tier. From what little, I don't have a lot of experience, I will admit, with him. He's one of the newer spirits. There's only a handful I've played less than him, but I've seen a lot of value in him.
Yeah,
which is again why I've kind of been improving my opinion on him.
Because yes, he's very strong, and it could just be a me thing. I feel like I have always struggled to keep up with the invaders. It feels like a really big chore to do.
Right. Did you want to put him in C tier then?
He's not C tier. What I was originally thinking was either above or below the lizard Charmander.
But B tier and A tier, remember, are supposed to be relatively similar power level. The difference being how much they impact the board negatively.
That's fair. Yeah, he would probably fit into A then. He's not impacting it negatively in any way.
Yeah.
Because there's no downside other than he's just not killing invaders generally until he's got them grouped up.
I think low A is pretty fine.
Yeah,
I
below Lure somewhere.
I don't have the most experience with him. I would like to play a handful more games before. And a lot of the Nature Incarnate, in fairness, I kind of reserve my right to redecide them.
Yeah,
I may have played them all in the anywhere from mid to high teens or more, but that's not really enough to say that I feel confident in a lot of these rankings.
Yeah, I just feel that Delirium is very invigorated at that.
Yeah, and that could be, but I don't think that necessarily means he's not at least a powerful and useful spirit to have in anything. And finally, that's right, we have Tree Grandma.
Yeah, the foreshadowing shall kick in with the newest token, Vitality.
Yeah, Towering Roots of the Jungle.
I am torn on saying it is the worst. Because there is a side benefit to it of it doesn't just interact with the invaders. If you play something like a Dire Metamorphosis, I know I keep referencing that card, but it sticks with me. It just prevents the next blight that would be added.
Yeah.
Meaning that you would get all of the benefits of it and none of the consequences. However, the majority of the times that it's used is going to be in a Ravage.
Yeah.
And it only works if there is no blight in there already.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the worst mechanic.
She also, to empower her Incarnate, which her Empowered Incarnate is quite good, needs to stack 3 of them in one land, which is a lot of commitment to one land, which you may never see Ravage. Or if you do, it will do so once, and you will still have 2 Vitality in there. But yeah, her Incarnate is very good. Invaders, Dahan, and Beast can't be damaged or destroyed at it. Gives all of your range from it an additional 1. And you skip all build actions in it. She is the second spirit that officially moves cities.
Yep.
And she also has the ability to just remove cities as well. Both of those are her most improved versions of her innate powers, but options nonetheless. Yep. She is fairly consistent at getting both of her innates. But overall, for what she does, she's a bit underwhelming. She's not really going to be generating a lot of fear. She has some on her Revoke Sanctuary and Cast Out, but that's to essentially supplement the fear you're not getting from removing invaders. And it's generally not as much fear as you would get if it was a Destroy effect. The ability to move white pieces, a decent amount. Fairly consistent elements on both of her tracks. But not really going to be able to compete super well with a lot of others, I feel.
Yeah.
What was your experience with Tree Grandma?
Well, as we've kind of talked about, defensive-based spirit. Now, she doesn't use the defend mechanic, but defensive in the sense that she kind
Vitality.
of, in the sense that she just kind of survives ravages type of thing. They're typically not my preferred spirit to play. That doesn't strictly make them bad, per se, but it does mean that my opinion is just a little soured by the fact that it's not my preferred play style, and it also means that they're typically the spirits I've played usually a little bit less than some of the others. Now, in my experience with Tree Grandma, she kind of just does exactly what you need her to do.
Yeah.
She never has felt like she's done anything so impressive. Like, it never felt like she's won her board. She's just kind of like stopped the invader. Like, it's the difference. It's the difference between you didn't. It's not so much that you didn't win the board. Or that you didn't lose the board. It's that the invaders didn't win the board.
Yeah.
Tree Grandma is playing to not lose rather than to win.
Yes.
And for those of you who played MOBAs, you may have heard similar terms like that before. Playing not to lose rather than playing to win. For those of you who are not, it basically just means that you're kind of just backed against the wall, and all you're trying to do is sustain.
Yeah.
You're not playing with the intent of I'm going to take out these invaders. I'm going to take out this enemy. I'm going to convert that win into more win. I am just going to sustain. I am just going to live long enough because as long as I'm alive, I haven't lost.
Yes.
And that's what playing Tree Grandma feels like to me.
Yeah, I have always felt that she gets kind of, at least with the element, or with the cards that I've drawn, pushed into a bit of a support.
Yeah. She is a pretty good support spirit. I will note that her elements of choice, by the way, are the same as Mr. Useless over here. Yet she actually capitalizes on those elements and their abilities and what they are capable of doing, yes. Unlike the Easter Island Man.
I do still think she's either high D or low C, though.
Yeah, I am not opposed to either.
I would like to lot her in D to fill it in a little bit more. But that's also just my need for a certain level of aesthetic balance. Because I feel like the sun is both better and worse than her.
Yeah, the sun is more chaotic in the sense that it relies heavily on, events not screwing it over, the invader deck not screwing it over.
Yeah.
Whereas she doesn't get screwed over by those type of things. She can handle multiple advantages. Yeah.
Is she better than Shadows? I suppose we'll just slowly tick up.
Yeah, I would argue her to be better than Shadows. From my experience with Shadow, at least in his baseline form.
Yes.
I would say that some of his aspects probably supersede Tree Grandma.
The ability to just remove a city and move a city are rare and valuable, but for what she's actually really doing, it makes it hard.
Yeah, I find it tough to put her above River Surges.
Really?
Again, River Surges doesn't have a lot of damage, not until you get to the late game, at which point it can wipe out an entire land, more or less by accident. But I think its control does more work than what Tree Grandma's Let Them Ravage and Who Fucking Cares will accomplish. Because Tree Grandma doesn't have built-in... I think she has one card that provides defend, but she doesn't really... Yeah, she doesn't really have a lot of ways to kind of ensure the Dahan are doing work for her.
Yeah, when the Dahan are still dying in this process.
Yeah. So because she doesn't have a lot of control, her idea of control is just they don't get to blight. Versus River, who's like, River has limited ways to destroy invaders, at least until the late game. But it prevents the Ravage completely in a lot of different features due to its ability to push explorers, towns, do a little bit of damage here and there type of thing.
Yeah.
Which means it also has, it's also in similar colors. The only color it's off is it switches out the green from Tree Grandma for water. which means they get similar-ish cards, and so that means water can pick up a defend card or two if it needs to. It can pick up a blight cleaning card like Tree Grandma can, because water has some blight cleaning in there as well.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily have defendability, so River also kind of struggles on the leaving Dahan alive through a Ravage. But the fact that it does a lot of other things that Tree Grandma can't, and that's the one thing that they share, is that the Dahan, they have to look for a way to keep the Dahan alive. They don't. I mean, Tree Grandma kind of.
Well, yes and no, because her incarnate is Invaders, Dahan, and Beast can't be damaged or destroyed at her empowered incarnate. But that's one space out of 8.
I think that's where I put her for now.
Yes, I am more than okay with that.
Yeah, Shadow's really, like I said, I'm tempted actually now that I'm looking at this. I think
Shadow goes to top of D, or even below Sun. Yeah.
I think I got to put him here.
Then let's move.
Especially because
let's move Tree Grandma to top of D. I feel like that's better.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean,
because I originally wanted her in D, but I couldn't justify putting her below Shadow's Flicker. But if he moves down there, I am much more confident in that decision.
I don't know if I agree with D, but I don't have an argument against it, so I'm just gonna to live with this. Again, everyone's allowed their own opinion, so yell at us in the comments if you don't like it.
Yep.
But I think Shadow had to move down here because it helps in the future when we do go through and rank the aspects to show just how much of an improvement a lot of his aspects provided him.
That could be. Is that something that we should do as well? Should we keep this after we're done with it?
Oh, I'm going to say.
And then add the aspects to it rather than just doing aspects. Just add aspects to where stuff is so that we can see where they change depending on.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But yeah, I think moving him down here helps because it'll showcase just how much more value some of his aspects have added to him.
Yes. Hearth Vigil move up because B can hold their own but have some kind of downside. Yes.
Yeah.
So because he's good at keeping Dahan alive.
He to the other players.
He can make them fight before the invaders. So technically, he's barely proactive. But yeah, so yeah, that would be sort of the downside of it. Is they're still going to be exploring and building, but generally, for the most part, he's able to ravage Dahan before the invaders.
Right.
Because obviously he would still be bottom of B if he moves up.
I mean, that's fine. We can put him there.
I'm torn on Shroud.
I just don't know if I like Shroud being the top of C tier.
Move him below Fear Guy? Because that was something we discussed, wasn't it? Was if he was better or worse than Fear Guy?
I think the Fear Guy has a better fear generation than this guy, but I think
has better removal.
But the fact that he does have removal, whereas this guy can never remove anything, so he is 100% reliant on other spirits to get rid of pieces for him.
True.
I wonder if we have to do this though.
I'm okay with that.
I wonder if we do this just because the downside for him, the detriment to the island is that he can't really stop a lot of the ravages. So a lot of the times they're going to be building, they're going to be ravaging, they're going to be hurting the board state, but he is still generating fear. He is still doing damage and will eventually remove.
So hear me out. So yes, technically, but if we're looking at if a skilled player was playing this person, someone who has absolutely mastered them, knows when they want to clear a board and prevent a ravage versus letting them ravage, then letting them ravage is not as much of a downside.
True.
Because they know how to benefit the most from it.
That's true. So what, you want to put him in A tier?
No, I'm saying justifying moving to B is that it is a higher skill field.
Yeah. I kind of like this too because I like him not so much being the top of C tier, just being kind of at the top like this because he kind of deserved it. Again, this guy used to be one of the best spirits in the entire game until power creep caught up to him
one day.
So
and then his aspects
didn't
really do much good for it. I think
Yeah.
one of them was better for it.
So it kind of feels nice to see him at least at the top of something, even if he's at the top of the mediocre.
We can pretend he's winning.
Yeah, even at the top of the mediocre pile, like it's still the top of something. Like yeah, he may have fallen from grace, but hey, you're still king of something.
Yeah, he went from A to C, but he's still top of C.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a pretty solid list. Do you see any changes that might be needed? Do the Horizon Spirits and D need to move down at all, or are we comfortable with them there?
I don't think anything is on the same level as this guy. I think there has to be at least a tier minimum. Like this guy is
like, do I want to put something down there? But also,
this guy is so. I don't think there's anything even close to how bad this guy is. I think like I had to add F tier to this list just because I knew he had to be somewhere separated from everything else.
Yeah. They even gave him the one cool color out of all of these. Just to really stand alone.
Yeah. Plus, this is another one of those instances where once we finally get the chance to go through the aspect,
he might actually bump up to D tier.
Well, his aspect does
it'll be ahead of him in F.
But it'll showcase just what a difference it makes, like just how bad this piece of shit fucking Spirit is. I feel
guy needs help, but you know what? At least he's got F tier to guard.
Yeah, I feel bad because when we first got this game, my dad tried to play with us, and he's like, "Oh, this guy looks cool." Like, Now, granted, we were playing without any invaders.
Just the very basic.
It was the vanilla game.
No events.
So he doesn't look as bad in the vanilla game, but it's one of those things where I look back on it now. I'm playing the Fear guy, and my dad's playing the fucking the Easter Island guy. I think my brother was my brother and my mom were there. It was a family game night thing, and my brother, I want to say, played Shadow. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he played Shadow. So I'm pretty sure my mom was playing River. But yeah, they were all playing the little like low complexity spirits. It was the first time playing the game. I just went, this guy looks fucking badass. I'm playing it.
Again, was that not my first instinct the first time I played? Like, oh, this looks awesome. I'm gonna play this guy.
But yeah.
I'm Batman.
I still look back at that and I'm just like, like when you're playing strict vanilla, he doesn't look nearly as bad.
Yeah.
But even my dad, like
but again, that's not because he's good. It's just because all of the.
But my dad could not figure out what to do with him, and I look at him to this day, and it's like he's got such a wonky fucking spirit track. It just hurts so bad. One card, 2 card, 2 card, 3 card, 4 card. Okay, so it's really tough to get a lot of card plays on because you're stuck for several turns playing with few card plays just to get to the high level card play.
2 turns if you want 2 card plays.
Yeah, 4 if you want to get to 3. Like it's really it takes so much, and he doesn't have a setup that lets him play with 3 or 4 cards. So you can't really do much more. You just want to get to 2 card plays, and you're stuck kind of going down the energy track, looking maybe get a major power as early as you feel comfortable. But he needs 3 card plays to trigger the level 2 of his innate. If he doesn't have 3 card plays, he's only triggering level 1 of his innate, which is, I guess, okay. I'm not knocking the ability to repeat a card play, especially one for free, but it has to be 1 energy cost or less to be repeatable.
And it's so expensive just to get that.
Yeah, he's just so bad. He's so bad. Like I said, there are minor powers that do what his card does, and for
better, with no limit.
Yeah, there's like Gift of Entwined Days, I think it's called, or something like that, where it's like 1
Gift
energy.
of Twin Days.
Yeah, where it's gift. Yeah, it's 1 energy, Sun, Moon, and target spirit repeats the lowest cost power. The lowest. You could play an entire hand of 3 or above cards and repeat it with that thing. Like,
yeah.
And this guy's like, I need 2 cards just to give you the repeat on a 1 cost. Like,
Like, let me get all the way down my card draw, and then you could do 6 or less, which still excludes some majors.
Yeah, several majors. Some of the better majors too. I mean, there's plenty of good majors that are 5 or 4 or even 6. But
it's like so
horrible. He needs not only an aspect, he needs a full errata. I would change his level 1 power to keep the shitty ass elements that he requires 2 card plays, but change it to like 2 cost or less.
Fully redesign him.
Yeah, or that too.
You can keep the art, obviously, but just redesign him.
He's oh man. All right. Well, I think we've talked everyone's ear off enough, and most people probably just skip to the end to see what our final chart looks like. So they didn't get to hear all our arguments for why we did certain things. So they're going to be posting in the comments like, "You did this wrong." Like, did you actually watch what our receivers for?
Yeah. Can like we generally talked and explained our
and as I've said before, I'll say it again here for everyone who skipped to the end. I am open to debate on nearly every one of these, except for maybe some of the S tiers.
I think all of the S tiers are undebatable.
Yeah, I think all the S tiers are more or less undebatable, but I am more or less open to debate on a lot of these spirits. Tell me why you think they shouldn't be where they are, or why they should be higher or lower, or whatever the excuse may be.
Or better yet, tell us your reason why the poor rock dude in F
should
stay there.
Tell us why vital strength of the earth is actually B tier. Or somehow A tier. Like,
or should we make a tier below F?
All right. Well, this has been Rion. I'm joined by Jaden, and that was our first Spirit Island tier list, and we are hoping to make more because we love this game. Yeah, planning. We are obsessed with this game.
I have problems when it comes to this game.
All right, we are out. See you guys later.
Bye.